It all kicks off on the day the school went up in flames, with the MC running through the fire trying to figure out a way to save his own skin. He spills that the reason he went to the art room was because, since he was going to check out anyway, he'd rather be right there. He wanted to spend his final moments in his absolute favorite spot, fully believing that fire would be his ultimate game over. But, just when he thought it was all wrapped up, the scenery around him totally flipped into a bright, super peaceful forest. Up pretty confused and holding his head, the MC realizes there is zero mistake about where he ended up. It has been 1 week since he mysteriously slipped into the painting, noticing he is literally living inside the canvas he drew himself. Looking back and low-key freaking out, he wonders if the students managed to evacuate the building safely during the accident. Right then, while he sets a basket on the ground, a somewhat bizarre-looking rabbit hops over in a super friendly way. Staring at the three-eyed little guy, he mentions he never thought he'd go through such a trippy experience in his entire life. Soon enough, a winged unicorn also pulls up, while the guy notices that time flows in a seriously weird way in this place. Since everything feels like a fever dream, the MC admits he has absolutely no clue how much time has actually passed since he got there. Even so, walking alongside these fantasy pets, he claims he has already figured out a few basic rules of this new painted world. The first rule gets tested right away as he starts painting an apple on a rustic canvas with his brush. In a flash, the fruit literally pops out of the painting, confirming that absolutely everything he draws there turns into real life. With that, the MC just sits there creating multiple apples in a row, totally hyped and pushing the limits of his crazy new skill. He figures out that if he draws a bag of salt, salt spawns in, and it works perfectly for pots, spatulas, and even plants. Super satisfied, he concludes he is finally free from spending cash on groceries, but he knows the skill has a hard cap. Completely frustrated, he rips the canvas, revealing that his biggest nerf is not being able to bring humans to life through his art. Touching the human creations just proves they are like empty shells, making it clear they will never become actual living people. But he quickly chills out and admits feeling a huge wave of relief that he didn't get some creepy overpowered ability that could ruin his peaceful vibe. Rule number 2 drops when he walks up to a frame on the tree, which lets him interact with the outside world through it. Peeking at the wrecked room through the painting, the guy explains he can even bounce from the painting if he uses this secret exit. However, checking the outside, he was totally shook to find out that exactly 31 years had passed since the day the school caught fire. Looks like the world got a massive update, since now there are hunters using magic to fight dangerous creatures out on the streets. One of the hunters goes all in for an attack, yelling for the squad to wipe the monster off the map with zero mercy. Wasting zero time, they blast massive energy waves that hit the creature dead on and cause a giant explosion on the spot. This absolute chaos, the MC admits he has zero confidence in surviving in a modern society overrun by monsters. Deciding to mind his own business, he leaves the frame in an abandoned building, fully believing it's way too risky to live outside the painting. As for rule number 3, he watches some flowers blooming and realizes that the forest has its very own independent ecosystem. All of this went down even though he only originally drew one simple 2-story cabin surrounded by a few trees. Over time, massive plants and even landmarks he never sketched out started spawning everywhere. On top of that, any wild little critter that spawns inside the painting ends up being super chill and friendly with him. A green little bird even lands on his shoulder while he carries the basket, proving just how much the environment accepts him naturally. Offering a piece of fruit to a chubby little beast, the MC wonders if all this affection is just because he is the admin of this place. He quickly realizes it makes total sense, since these animals live in his artwork and would naturally respect the guy who literally created them. Analyzing a red fruit in his hands, he uncovers rule number 4, while a mysterious system window randomly pops up in the air. The jump scare is real when the screen flashes out of nowhere, making him complain that this system should really drop a warning first. Then he realizes this isn't a forest rule, but actually the awakening phenomenon that hit the people on Earth, creating the hunters. Feeling like he is inside an RPG, the MC thinks it is super weird that he became one of these awakened folks, even while being totally isolated in there. But at the end of the day, living inside the painting just became a chill routine where he spends his time farming high-quality ingredients. Checking out the system options, he plans to try crafting some potions with his loot, even if he has no clue if he'll ever need them. The window glows, confirming the crafting of elixirs, which he treats like unlocking a DLC in his current unemployed lifestyle. Walking around stress-free with his stuff, he confesses he has never been this happy, just eating, sleeping, and having zero responsibilities. Today's lunch is already secured some beautiful fried sweet potatoes with honey that look straight out of a food commercial. With the ingredients staying permanently fresh in the cabin, he can finally vibe with the slow life he always dreamed of. Savoring his meal, he remembers his days grinding as a teacher with barely any free time, thinking it is awesome to spend hours on one single plate. Staring at the frame leaning on the wall that connects the two worlds, the MC states with absolute certainty that he loves this absolute piece way too much. Right then, a sudden noise echoes through the forest, catching him off guard as he notices the sound is coming straight from the painting's main entrance. The frame hanging on the tree starts shaking slightly, signaling that something or someone is messing with it on the outside. The outside view shows a dark, trashed room, bringing up the final, critical rule about the painting's existence. The canvas itself is tossed on the floor among the building's rubble, totally exposed to anyone wandering by. It is revealed that Gio literally became the painting itself, and his whole existence is tied to that tiny piece of canvas dumped on the floor. His painted face with sad features decorates the dirty frame, showing exactly how the outside world views the poor guy. Suddenly, the eye on the painting shifts subtly, proving he is 100% aware of everything going on around him. The source of the noise is a shadowy monster creeping along the wall of the dark room, heading straight for the artwork. The creature expands menacingly down the hallway, looking ready to swallow up anything in its path. From the inside, Gio covers his own mouth, getting super tense, just praying the threat doesn't notice his precious portrait. Luckily, the bizarre shadow just slides past the abandoned wall and keeps moving without paying any attention to the object on the floor. But right after, the vibe totally flips when a human walks into the dark building and stops right in front of the lost frame. Completely unaware of this new visitor, the MC lets out a sigh, thinking the monster danger had just passed. Ignoring the outside drama, Gio takes a chill walk through his sunny forest holding a clay pot. He seriously loves this isolated sanctuary, living his days in total harmony with his crops and the quietness, far away from modern chaos. Slurping down a massive plate of pasta, the guy feels so good he wouldn't mind staying stuck inside the painting forever. Chilling on his cabin sofa, he relaxes completely and sends out a mental thank you for finally having such an awesome and comfy life. But the piece is short-lived. The hunters find the painting in the real world and are blown away that it survived the fire without a scratch. One of them picks up the canvas, noticing the pristine condition, and decides to check the title written on the piece. As soon as he reads the artwork's name, the squad hypes up the fact that they have an item appraisal expert on the team. They excitedly debate how valuable the painting might be, thinking it is super sus. It is the only intact thing left in a mountain school. Following the logic of this new magical world, the hunters conclude the painting must be elite loot straight out of a dungeon. Not missing a beat, the leader orders them to bag the piece quickly, totally convinced the Collectors Guild would drop serious cash for it. The dude shows some major greed over the random drop, fully believing they are about to make absolute bank off the sale. As a result, while he just wanted to vibe in peace, the MC ends up getting tossed around, tied up in the ropes securing the painting. From that bumpy moment on, the gateway to his isolated world started traveling to random locations entirely against his will. The portrait ends up on the stage of a super boogie auction house, getting flexed to a bunch of mysterious rich folks. The auctioneer's hammer finally slams the table hard, making it official that the painting holding Gio just got bagged by a new owner. In the middle of that fancy room, the artwork catches the eyes of some big shots who aggressively bid on it. The bids skyrocket among the wealthy crowd, showing exactly how much hype the painting is getting. The piece is finally sniped for an insane price and shipped straight to a major collector's private gallery. The painting heads down an elevator wrapped in chains and magical seals, proving this place has top-tier security against intruders. The electronic panel beeps as it hits basement level 5, stopping at the final destination for the highly coveted artwork. An employee carries the piece with extreme care through the luxurious halls of that secret underground bunker. The place is packed with bizarre items and magical artifacts kept strictly under lock and key by the organization. He walks in complete silence to the end of the main hall to deliver the new drop straight to his boss. With a simple hand gesture, the elegant guy orders them to mount the MC's painting on the wall. Standing with his back turned, he stares at the newly arrived art with intense interest, looking totally mesmerized by the piece. This stylish dude thinks the painting is straight up fire, revealing himself as Bizabiel, an S-class hunter and the head of the Collectors Guild. At that moment, the assistant carefully tries to get his attention, still kind of freaked out by the massive purchase. The employee questions if dropping that much cash on a simple painting wasn't a huge stretch, even if their guild is literally all about collecting stuff. Fixing his shirt sleeves, the leader claps basking if it makes any sense to tell a collector to stop hoarding top-tier loot. He makes it crystal clear that he considers the employee's question a direct insult to his job, all without taking his eyes off his new treasure. The assistant argues they blew a fortune on it, but the boss fires back that he used his own money and sees zero issues with the flex. Bursting with confidence, Bizabiel reveals that even the overpowered president of the Hunters Association had her eyes on this exact piece. The lore flashes back a bit, recalling the massive cataclysm that wrecked Earth exactly 31 years ago. Several dimensions crashed into the planet all at once, causing nightmare monsters to spawn from dungeons scattered everywhere. Along with the freaky creatures, direct interference from a few deities left the world in a state of pure chaos. But the mysterious system dropped right after to save humanity from total game over using its divine symbols. Cutting back to the present, the massive Hunters Association HQ is shown under the command of the famous President Dan Hera. This exact woman, who despises normal things and has the weird hobby of raising monsters, dropped a ridiculous bid for Gio's painting. The assistant is totally floored by the tea, admitting that the president's sudden interest is a massive shock. The leader explains that a piece wanted by someone that OP should be spilling secrets, but his appraisal skill only gave him error messages. The assistant quickly apologizes for jumping to conclusions, while the S-class hunter brushes it off, saying he gets the confusion. Sitting back in his chair, the silver-haired dude admits flat out that he doesn't have the slightest clue what this painting actually means. The employee just stands there in absolute silence, completely failing to process the ridiculous answer he just got. Totally lost, the guy adjusts his glasses and asks what on earth his boss is even trying to say. He annoyingly reminds Bizabiel that he only hit S-class status specifically because of his flawless item, appraisal hack. The subordinate internally panics, realizing his boss just found an item that is completely unreadable, even to him. Sweating bullets, he starts imagining the worst-case scenario, terrified of what could happen to Earth if something this bizarre and mysterious is left unchecked. Letting out a sarcastic laugh, the boss jokes that sucking up to him like that won't score him a bonus, while the guy tries to explain himself. Completely flipping the vibe, the silver-haired boss states with a dark look that the artwork is the absolute most dangerous thing they've ever laid hands on. The hunter confesses that this insane danger level is exactly what made him want to buy the piece. Shifting his eyes back to the canvas, he gets super curious to find out who the incredibly sad-looking person in the portrait is. He praises the insane quality of the art, wondering if it was actually made by human hands or spawned from some unknown magic. Admiring the tiny details, the leader mentions the painting gives off a living vibe, almost like a real person is trapped inside it. A quick zoom in on the painted MC's dark eye proves he is still eavesdropping on literally everything the hunters are saying. From the outside, the collector steps even closer to the imaginary glass, trying to crack the canvas's mysteries with his own eyes. While trying to deep dive into it, the hunter's mind gets suddenly yanked into a completely dark and dead silent void. Everything around him gets instantly color drained, leaving the guy surrounded by endless pitch black darkness. But, right in the middle of that absolute void, tiny sparkles magically pop up across the space as he reaches out his hand. The vision bursts wide open, revealing a jaw-dropping landscape packed with galaxies and stars, making him feel like he is staring straight into the universe itself. Snapping back to reality in a blink, he steps back from the painting, still heavily shook by the crazy trip he just had. The assistant calls out to the boss, trying to figure out what just happened, noticing he had spaced out hard, staring at the art. Suddenly, the leader busts out a loud, obnoxious laugh of pure hype, completely obsessed with what he just experienced. With his hands literally shaking from excitement, he is 100% sure this thing is nowhere near a basic portrait. Meanwhile, safely inside the painting world, Gio hears the unhinged laughing echoing loudly across his peaceful backyard. The panting MC admits he got totally jumped, scared by the random yelling that ruined his quiet time. Glancing around his cabin, he swears he never thought he'd feel his life was in danger while just chilling at home. Outside the canvas, the rich dude clears his throat begging for attention, making Gio admit he noticed the background changes from the window, but wasn't exactly looking to chat. Tapping the frame with a super polite smile, the silver-haired guy asks straight up if the painted dude can hear his voice. Wanting absolutely zero part in this drama, Gio instantly turns his head away and mumbles under his breath that he is not in a talking mood. Scanning the room through the gateway, the guy figures he ended up in some bougie gallery that the owner clearly obsesses over. Judging by the pricey decor. The massive catch is that this freaking painting is the one and only door in and out of his private forest. Bummed out, he realizes that anytime he wants to take a quick peek at the real world now, he's basically going to look like he is trespassing on private property. His anxiety spikes hard, terrified that the hunters might label the artwork cursed and just burn it to a crisp without a second thought. Guessing he came on way too strong, the collector decides to back off and gives the painting a timeout to get used to him. As soon as the guy promises to slide back the next day, Gio curls up in the bushes, trying to process this stressful new daily routine. Going into full panic mode, the MC pulls his hair out, just thinking about the rich guy showing up every single day to bug him. The next morning, his daily grind restarts exactly the same as always, with a perfectly aesthetic breakfast waiting on the table. Already full, he decides to brew some tea using the flowers and wild berries he perfectly dried out the day before. The magical ingredients are kept perfectly fresh inside wooden boxes, just waiting to become a top-tier drink. But, in a quick brain fade moment, the guy realizes he totally forgot to craft a proper set of cups for the vibe. Not stressing it all over the hiccup, he solves the minor glitch by quickly painting a fancy porcelain teapot on a fresh rustic canvas. In a matter of seconds, the ceramic piece comes to life, hopping off the paper straight into his open hands. With everything looking aesthetic on the table, he finally pours the steaming drink using his brand new custom loot. Catching the amazing scent, Gio takes the first sip with his eyes closed, fully soaking in the peace of his private sanctuary. Placing the cup back on the saucer super calmly, he rates the perfect taste of the medicinal brew he just made from scratch. A yellow system notification randomly pops up, breaking the silence, dropping a GG for crafting the forest butterfly tea. Reading the glowing screen from the sofa, he finds out the drink gives a massive immunity buff, but quickly remembers he can't even test it. The truth is, from the exact second he entered that magical frame, all his normal biological functions just straight up vanish. Even though he can still roam his farms, eat elite meals, and take solid naps, his physical body permanently changed. He casually mentions he doesn't feel hot or cold, doesn't sweat one bit, and hasn't had to use the bathroom once since he got there. A sketch of a toilet literally pops up on screen to show the MC doesn't need to stress over those basic human needs anymore. Casually doing the dishes, Gio reflects on how he basically fell into a painting and accidentally leveled up into a higher being. Happy with his tea, he concludes he is officially freed from the horrible chore of cleaning bathrooms forever. But then, a voice from the outside calls his name, instantly killing the chill vibe he had going in the cabin. The guy immediately tenses up and makes it clear that the most toxic problem in his life right now is the gallery owner. An insane 11 days have already passed since that man started relentlessly trying to start a convo through the frame. The guild leader mentions how sad the silence is and asks if he doesn't feel lonely, but Gio is literally thriving in his introvert era. Despite appreciating the warm attempt at small talk, the guy vastly prefers the absolute safety the inside of the painting offers. Refusing to take the L, Bizabiel complains that the painted guy just blinks at him from the canvas, insisting he is dying for a real chat. Right then, the collector points to a monster tied up on the gallery floor and asks if that offering wasn't exactly his vibe. Taking a slightly dark turn, the rich dude explains that the best tributes are usually super guilty humans or entirely pure beings. He flexes that finding someone like that nowadays is easy mode, offering to capture any kind of bad guy or sign whatever contract the painting wants. Watching this unhinged scene, the MC goes into a silent panic, thinking this whole setup is way too extreme for his taste. Fearing things will spiral out of control if he gives even one reply, he decides to stay muted while feeling like the tea just gave him heartburn from the stress. On the outside, the assistant tries to talk some sense into his boss, reminding him he is the CEO of a massive conglomerate and should actually be working. Getting completely ghosted, the collector sighs, looking frustrated, and asks if the artwork really has zero intention of talking to him. The painting stays on mute, keeping its usual frozen posture to avoid dropping any clues. Accepting another day of getting left on read, the silver-haired dude takes the rejection and politely promises to see him again soon. As soon as the guild boss and his assistant turn around and walk away, the gallery goes back to being totally empty. With his cup on the table, Gio realizes the guy doesn't have toxic intentions and admits he actually doesn't hate him. Even so, he lets out an exhausted sigh on the couch, admitting that dealing with this daily spam drains his social battery hard. Deciding to make a move when the timing is right, the guy opens his cabinets, fully believing the rich dude won't keep up this streak forever. So he grabs a bag of flour from the shelf, planning to attempt contact, only when the gallery owner finally loses interest. Mixing the ingredients in a wooden bowl, the MC focuses on baking while sorting out his game plan for the future. His biggest fear is that the hunters will flag the painting as useless junk since it won't reply, and just toss it in a fire. Fearing the absolute worst, he knows that if the physical item gets trashed, his safe space might literally get deleted forever. Firing up the cabin oven to bake his recipe, the young guy makes it super clear he is nowhere near ready to turn to ash. Right after pulling a batch of hot cookies from the oven, he figures he needs to find a way to hack the control over the painting's only door. Far from there, the underground gallery's elevator panel dings, signaling a drop to the 5th floor during the dead, silent dawn. The doors slide open, revealing a suited guard walking down the dark hallway with a flashlight to do his security rounds. Checking the clocks, the guard confirms it is exactly 4 in the morning and that all the room temperatures are completely normal. Reaching the back of the fancy hall, the employee announces with relief that it is finally time to check Gio's famous portrait. However, shining the light on the wall, he is hit with an image of a landscape with a house and 0 human faces in sight. The guard steps closer to the frame trying to compute the glitch, since the report clearly stated it was a portrait. Right behind him, bare feet step silently on the freezing gallery floor without making a single noticeable sound. A massive chill shoots down the guard's spine, making his body completely freeze up in terror as he feels a creepy presence behind him. Totally hijacked by fear, he turns his head in slow motion, bracing himself to face whatever the heck is standing there. In the middle of the poorly lit hallway, a tall figure in a black cloak and hood stares at the employee in total silence. Breaking the intense tension, the mysterious stranger drops a simple hello, with a chill voice echoing through the empty space. The hooded figure then holds out his pale hands and asks super politely if the guy would be down for a little chat. Overwhelmed by absolute panic in front of the ghost, the guard drops his clipboard and pen on the floor, totally paralyzed. The sun comes up, lighting up the massive headquarters of the Collectors Guild, one of the top 3 orgs in all of South Korea. This elite spot is so exclusive that only the boss, Bisabiel, and a few verified curators actually have the clearance to enter. Through the bright, busy hallways of the top floors, a sharp-looking guy in overcoat speed walks while carrying a briefcase. Reaching the elevator lobby, he hits the button and patiently waits for his turn to drop down to the underground vaults. While waiting for the ride, the guy overhears a comment next to him about rumors that the building is literally haunted. A coworker slides over asking for a second, holding some files and looking seriously stressed about the situation. Handing over a coffee, the dude explains that the basement level 5 gallery just racked up 17 bizarre complaints in the last 2 weeks alone. The issue is that the boss Bisabiel hoards literally anything he calls art, not giving a single crap if the piece is actually a lethal monster. Because the boss is so eccentric, any ghost sighting report down there usually just means some creature managed to break loose. Sitting in one of the lobby chairs to sip his coffee, the overcoat guy remembers that dealing with ghosts is basically business as usual around there. The coworker agrees, but warns that even though HR managed to cap the rumors for now, they won't be able to hide it forever. With a tired sigh, the curator rubs his forehead, already predicting the massive headache he is going to get assigned to fix. Already accepting his fate as the guild's designated firefighter, the guy adjusts his hands and claims he is totally used to this mess. Revealing himself as Yu Song-un, an A-class hunter working as the collector's gardener, he asks straight up what needs to get done. Super relieved that the hunter is down for it, the coworker hypes him up, saying Song-un is always the most reliable carry for these missions. Trying to ride the good mood, he hints that the guy should take the general admin manager spot, but the offer gets instantly curved. The coworker pushes it, bringing up that the curator used to be a genius research team leader back when he was at the association. Bad memories flood Song-un's mind, flashing back to the insane pressure and toxic backlash he faced when he decided to quit that role. Adjusting his glasses, he makes it clear his only goal now is to stay low-key, shutting down the promotion talk on the spot. Pivoting back to the actual problem, the coworker notes they are already prepping fast countermeasures, since bad rumors tanked the gallery's PR. Handing over the clipboard, he says he compiled all the sighting data and that a security training session drops next week. Scanning the notes, Song-un spots that the intruder always strikes at the exact same time and keeps the identical tall, pale, black, caped skin. A police sketch attached to the file shows the ghost's face, featuring a wild detail where one witness firmly insists the ghost is super hot. The listed skills include moving in pure stealth mode, 0 footstep audio, and an extreme struggle to hold direct eye contact. Reviewing the stats, the hunter thinks the reports are way too consistent and finds it sus that the intruder isn't even trying to hide. The assistant totally backs that read, finding the creature's vibe completely off, script for a standard gallery break-in. Deep in thought, the curator points out that the ghost is spamming appearances, but miraculously hasn't caught a single body or hurt anyone so far. This is absolutely wild, because ever since the cataclysm dropped, every single entity and beast out of those dungeons has been hyper-aggressive toward humans. If a legitimately harmless monster was actually roaming around, that insane discovery would be breaking news worldwide. Before the public even found out, the Ruthless Association would lock the weirdo up in a lab to use it as a permanent test subject. Tripping over another detail in the file, Song-un points at the paper asking what the heck the part about the ghost handing out freebies means. The coworker explains the intruder acts like a basic NPC asking for a chat, but doubts anyone would actually fall for a monster playing human. The reality is that the ghost was literally just the hooded MC trying to introduce himself politely to the guards using his real name, completely missing the fact that the staff was too petrified to even look him in the eye. He just kept talking to himself, trying to network in the real world. Reading the logs, Song-un finds out the ghost's topics are completely basic small talk, never trying to cross boundaries or be creepy. Right after, the coworker points to an attachment, trying to show what kind of loot the intruder actually drops for the staff after chatting. The curator checks the paper, looking super intrigued by the random trivia. He quickly realizes the lore behind this haunting is just getting weirder and weirder. The employee confirms the gifts are literally just regular food, questioning what kind of monster runs on such a domestic, soft, boy setting. On cue, the hunter immediately asks if the science team scanned the ingredients to check for poison or debuffs. Replying to that, the guy explains that Boss Bizabil decided to test the snacks using some prisoners they had locked up. Song-un instantly wants to know if the ghost food ended up giving the test subjects a game over. In a massive plot twist, the coworker reveals that the snacks actually functioned like top-tier healing potions. Hearing that, the silver-haired dude tenses up, trying to crack the meta behind this entire weird setup. The assistant breaks down that the food literally cured digestion issues and chronic pain, leaving the research squad totally baffled at how a basic sweet has those buffs. With that, the curator reaches the conclusion that the more he uncovers about this monster, the more toxic the situation seems. He realizes the creature doesn't just read people's health bars, but actively crafts flawless items to heal them while hiding in the shadows. On top of everything, the intruder casually bypasses the guild's heavy security system without triggering a single alarm. Putting all these puzzle pieces together, Song-un is absolutely positive they are dealing with an ultra-high-rank threat. The coworker agrees, but highlights that this fake, nice guy act makes things way messier. It'd be way easier if the ghost just went on a rampage. It is a known fact that any kindness shown by dungeon entities basically always ends in an absolute disaster. History proves it, serving as a reminder that networking with other dimensional civilizations has already brought massive L's to humanity. Years ago, a squad of diplomats was deployed to try and establish a chill connection with those mysterious beings. However, they all came back totally mutated into monstrous freaks, simply because the entities thought human bodies were low tier and decided to upgrade them as an act of pure kindness. Thinking about that nightmare, the curator doubles down that dungeon beings are humanity's absolute enemies, making this ghost hunt a seriously tricky mission to pull off. Determined to speedrun this mystery, he stuffs the papers in his briefcase and declares he is taking over the case personally from now on. Super relieved to dodge the bullet, the assistant thanks him for carrying, while the hunter just says that fixing these messes is literally his job description. Already prepping to head down, Song-un speaks up one last time to highlight a massive red flag in the timeline. He walks smoothly toward the entrance of the underground transit. The hunter states that all these bizarre glitches started on the exact same day the boss installed Gio's portrait in the 5th basement. The metal doors slide shut slowly as he descends to investigate the link between the artwork and the ghost. During the ride to the bottom of the building, the silver-haired dude flashes back to the moment his boss dumped the responsibility of the new drop on him. On that day, the guild leader seemed insanely hyped about the new cosmetic item for the secret gallery. Bisabiel was so stoked about his recent snipe that he assigned the curator exclusively to maintain that one high-value item. The rich guy was swirling his wine glass, boldly claiming that this basic painting was easily the most important piece in the whole stash. Snapping back to the present, the coworker just watches as the curator officially takes the lead on the case. Alone in the elevator, the hunter thinks about how his boss's obsessions always end up dragging him into unwanted side quests. As soon as he hits the 5th floor, he takes his first step into the dark hallway, fully expecting to run into some serious aggro. Knowing perfectly well he'd have to sacrifice his whole night, he checks his gear, realizing this won't be a quick speedrun. Annoyed by his own RNG, the guy grumbles that he is definitely going to end up racking up crazy overtime because of this little stunt. Keeping a solid stance, the curator kicks off his night investigation, moving stealthily through halls packed with magical artifacts. Checking his phone screen, he confirms it is almost 4:30 in the morning, the exact spawn window for the target. It doesn't take long before the hunter spots the ghost chilling in the middle of the room, noticing the creature is already free, roaming. Barefoot figure in the black cloak perfectly matches all the physical descriptions dropped by the terrified guards during their patrols. Reading the pattern, Song-un figures the intruder picks the dawn specifically because it is the server's lowest population time. The investigator guesses the monster is either fully aware it is being watched or is hard locked by some strict coding rules. Hiding behind a pillar, the silver-haired guy rates the ghost intelligence as pretty high, thinking it might just be shy or super strategic. Opting not to rush in, he pops his special ambient sound adjustment skill to try and catch any audio cues in the room. But the very next second, the hunter gets completely stunned by the glitchy feedback from his boosted senses. Staring at the guy's bare feet, the curator notices his movement is totally bugged, finally getting why the basic guards thought he had zero footstep audio. In reality, the hooded figure's steps produce an insanely soft noise, sounding exactly like grass swaying gently in the wind. The investigator finds this super suspicious, since a dude that tall shouldn't physically be able to move that smoothly. Then, the hunter catches a totally random pattern in the target's behavior right in the middle of the hall. To his absolute shock, the ghost is just standing there fixated on a classic painting hanging on the wall. Knowing that bumping into any of the magic items there could cause a server wipe, Song Un is amazed that the creature is just looking without touching. He tries to figure out if the humanoid actually appreciates the art meta, or if he's just idling to pass the time in the gallery. Super focused, the investigator keeps tracking every micro movement, trying to see if the intruder is farming for high-tier loot. However, the face hidden under the hood shifts slightly, exposing the creature's high perception stats. The painted MC lets out a little hum when he realizes he just made direct eye contact with the dude camping in the shadows. The curator freezes instantly, realizing his stealth strat just got completely blown. Through the hunter's terrified POV, the entity's gaze seems to glow with a heavy, dense energy in the dark. The intruder's model is instantly replaced by a massive nightmare fuel silhouette inside the silver-haired guy's head. Totally overwhelmed by the jump scare, Song uninstinctively steps back, feeling the crushing weight of that presence. Staring down the ghost, he wonders what kind of busted aura manages to be pitch black and blindingly radiant at the exact same time. Dead center in all that disturbing darkness, the hunter feels he is staring into an infinite void ready to insta-kill him. Just making eye contact with the target creates insane pressure in the room, proving this is a boss-level entity capable of inflicting deep terror debuffs. Choking on his own anxiety, Song ungrabs his chest, feeling an unfathomable force standing right there. Sweating bullets, he drops to his knees on the gallery floor, completely staggered by the aura he just witnessed. A feeling of total helplessness takes over the investigator, who can't even process the threat standing in front of him. But then, completely killing the horror vibe, the black, cloaked figure just turns around and books it across the hall in a blind panic. The ghost sprints away at max speed, looking like he is running from some terrifying boss mechanic. In a flash, the hooded body throws itself face first straight into the back wall of the gallery. Silence claims the room once again, leaving only the old portrait of Geo hanging exactly where the creature vanished. Watching that absolute meme of a scene, the curator forces a nervous smile, realizing the gigantic nightmare ghost just ran away to hide. Getting up totally confused, the hunter grumbles that this whole thing is a joke, since he did literally nothing to trigger that aggro. Back inside the painted world, the MC drops to a crouch in his peaceful garden, admitting he got scared hard by the creepy guy. Trying to make sense of the glitch, he wonders why on earth a normal person would be camping in the shadows like that. Then it slowly clicks in his brain, making the guy consider that the investigator might have actually run away because he was terrified of him. Fresh memories pop up, reminding him that the other gallery NPCs also always ran for their lives without looking back the second they spotted him. Staring at the empty exit through the frame, the MC guesses that his own panicked reaction made it look like Het was the one fleeing the encounter. Sitting chill on the grass, he decides he needs to just keep playing the role of a harmless painting so these misunderstandings don't snowball out of control. Just then, one of the weird forest bunnies hops over casually right to where he is sitting. Looking at the little pet, the guy wonders if that cape dude will ever respawn in the gallery later. Reaching his hand out slowly, he admits he has a strong gut feeling that the mysterious guy will pop up again soon. But the animal zooms away, leaving him frustrated that the mobs always dodge when he tries to pet them. Staring at his empty hand, he admits he'd love to have a real pet to just hug whenever he wanted. The young guy's lonely look shows a genuine craving for some actual co-op company in his isolated solo run. Deciding to fix that, he quickly preps a blank canvas on the easel inside his cabin. Two of the investigation kicks off in the silent gallery, where the portrait is still hanging perfectly on the usual wall. Getting a minor jump scare, the curator mumbles when he spots the art exactly where it was before. He stands frozen in front of the painting for a bit, keeping total radio silence to analyze the spawn point. The hunter lets out a massive sigh of relief, explaining he thought the entity had logged off for good after running away last night. Recalling the previous scare, he concludes that last night's aura 100% confirmed they aren't dealing with a low-level mob. From here on out, his main quest is to figure out the painting's rules and see if they can actually vibe peacefully. The hunter confesses that just standing there staring into those creepy eyes literally drains his HP. Thinking back to the Great Cataclysm, he assesses that some of the invader mobs can only be cleared if humans learn their lore. Since rushing in for a DPS check isn't guaranteed to work, studying the enemy's moveset became an essential survival strat. Breaking the silence, the MC's soft voice echoes straight from the painting, asking if the visitor would be down to chat. Keeping a solid stance, the curator immediately replies yes, confirming he is ready to open a dialogue tree. For the hunter, keeping his cool and accepting the prompt is just another mandatory survival tactic on modern Earth. On the inside, the painted guy gets super emotional, absolutely convinced he's dealing with a really good dude. Deeply moved by the guy's manners, he thinks it's awesome how they're vibing even after jump, scaring each other during their first meet up. He is blown away that he doesn't detect an ounce of fear from the visitor, even though the guy is talking to a literal talking canvas. Taking the lead, the young guy apologizes for last night's lag, silently admiring what a polite member of society the dude is. Meanwhile, the visitor nods along, because in a world crawling with giant beasts, a simple talking picture frame is honestly pretty mid. Accepting the apology, the investigator calms the entity down, saying there is zero need to be sorry, and thanks him for being so chill. Riding the good vibes, the MC politely asks if he could get the guy's screen name. The hunter goes on high alert instantly, noticing the chat just took the exact same route the ghost used with the previous NPCs. Knowing the hidden traps, he understands that dropping your real name nowadays is wildly risky, acting as the main link for soul binding contracts. Despite the natural fear, the investigator figures the ghost pacifist playstyle so far lowers the odds of this being a bait. Based on his hard data, he decides to trust that the monster won't pull a dirty trick just from getting a basic username. Putting a hand on his chest to show respect, the hunter officially introduces himself as Yu Song Un. The MC instantly points out that the look on the guy's face makes it super obvious he's got a bunch of questions queued up. Pretty hyped, the curator asks straight up if the ghost that spawned last night was actually the guy in the painting himself. The terrifying image of the hooded ghost flashes in Song Un's mind while he waits for the entity's response. Without stalling, the artwork instantly hits him with a yiz, leaving the hunter shook by how easy the confession was. Reading the visitor's obvious face, the young guy answers the unspoken thought, confirming he can literally clip out of the canvas whenever he wants. The guy's chill attitude shows how hard he's trying to keep the chat as clear and friendly as possible. Realizing his internal panic was broadcasting loudly on his face, the hunter shows a little embarrassment for the slip up. He admits his genuine shock that a non-human entity would just leak top tier and tell about itself without hesitating for a second. Explaining his basic logic, the painting swears there was zero reason to hide anything, simply because the dude asked. Trying to test the limits of this random trust fall, the investigator asks what would have happened if he had asked with toxic intentions. Staring at the visitor with total zen, the young guy declares that that kind of toxic mindset just doesn't fit the reality of the situation. To wrap it up, he states that Seong Un is a good, well-mannered guy, and that's exactly why he chose to interact with him so openly. Gulping hard, the investigator nervously guesses that the entity has some busted hack to scan and sort people's karma alignments. Fearing the worst, he starts imagining if the artwork would just switch to aggro mode if it ever faced someone flagged as an enemy. Interrupting the investigator's stressful overthinking, the MC calmly asks if he has any more questions in the queue. Snapping out of his trance, the curator confirms he has more questions, trying to mask the heavy anxiety he just felt. With that, Song Un asks if the supposed ghost that's been dropping delicious loot around the gallery lately is also him. Hearing the weird label, the entity goes totally silent, showing a slight cringe at being called a ghost. The hunter immediately picks up on the vibe shift, finding it super sus that the guy suddenly lagged on such a basic question. Rethinking his word choice, he internally wonders if the monster got triggered by being treated like a basic low-tier phantom. On the inside, the MC touches the frame and apologizes if his random spawns ended up traumatizing the security guards. Feeling super down about the whole mess, the young guy realizes the staff were literally running for their lives because they thought the painting was cursed. Gripping his own shirt to keep his anxiety in check, he decides to drop a massive lore reveal about his weird existence. Staring seriously at the visitor, the painting states loud and clear that he never actually had a game over in real life. The curator tries to decode the lore drop, immediately asking why he spends his time speed walking through the building's hallways at 4 a.m. Explaining his side, the guy reveals he was just curious to find out where his spawn point got moved to after he was kidnapped as a painting. Plus, he admits that the insane amount of rare loot sitting in that secret basement really caught his eye during his walks. Checking out his surroundings, he explains he always wanted to figure out what kind of players worked there and what their casual lives looked like. The curiosity went even deeper, trying to learn the tastes and usernames of every employee in a world that got hit with so many crazy patches. Chilling in his private base, the young guy argues that keeping up a social life is totally mandatory, since nobody wants to get cancelled and destroyed for looking sketchy. Evaluating the logical answers, the curator notes that this obsession with human culture is a super common trait among high-tier boss monsters. To break the ice, the painting compliments that the whole experience is way better when he runs into polite players along the way. Pretty satisfied, the hunter says thanks and jokes that he already noticed how much the entity stands good manners. Right after, the guy confesses he found the basic NPCs way better company than the annoying admin who runs the place. Flashing back to the spam visits, he flat out roasts the suit-wearing rich guy, saying he talks way too freaking much. The curator blinks a few times, listening to the painting complain that the gallery owner yaps so much he doesn't even leave room for a reply. Trying hard not to burst out laughing, Song Un is amazed that his own unbearable boss actually managed to get on the Ghost's Bane list. Now it makes perfect sense why the guild leader couldn't extract a single useful drop of info from this exact same artwork. Taking the heat, the investigator clears his throat and apologizes on behalf of his boss, just calling him eccentric. Chilling the guy out, the young guy promises he didn't flag the boss as a bad dude, leaving the hunter mind blown by how pacifist he is against an S-class's toxic behavior. Staring at the glowing, unreadable silhouette of the artwork, the investigator mentally questions what the heck this weird creature actually is. Ignoring the visitor's brain freeze, the MC takes the wheel again, patiently asking if there's any other lore left to unpack. The curator takes the mic back, noting that the portrait usually keeps its eyes shut, and asks if the entity can still see the players around it like that. Walking down the halls shortly after, Song Un wonders if the guy spent all that time just spectating from the inside trying to figure out what his actual endgame is with these human chats. The truth is, the MC wasn't really stream sniping anyone. He was just looking outside because the map kept changing constantly, like staring out of a bus window heading downtown. He explains that the painting only opens its eyes for real when there's an actual desire to connect with the outside server, something he verified using a mirror piece back in the wrecked school. Otherwise, the avatar stays permanently eyes closed, letting the guy safely spectate everything from the comfort of his private lobby. The young guy casually admits he ends up watching the feed simply because all those people keep spawning right in front of his frame. Without much choice but to watch the stream, he jokes that these characters moving around outside are actually pretty entertaining to spectate. Hearing this wild perspective, the investigator is temporarily speechless before muttering if that's really how the mechanics work. Apparently, in this weird entity's POV, the real masterpiece isn't him stuck in the canvas, but the chaotic humans grinding in the outside world. With that, Song Un gives a slight bow of respect, admitting that the guy's totally unfiltered and straightforward tone keeps catching him off guard. The MC defends himself, saying he was just trying to be polite, which makes the investigator deep. Think what that word even means coming from a monster. The hunter ponders as he walks down the dark corridor, remembering that an actual human should naturally act with decent manners no matter the lobby. Super happy with how the run went, the silver-haired dude concludes that the late-night chat was actually a pretty solid experience. The phone screen lights up showing 9 a.m., confirming that day 2 of the geoportrait investigation is officially a wrap. Right after, the curator kicks open his boss's office doors, loudly announcing that this freaking painting is highly dangerous. Chilling at his massive luxury desk across the room, the guild leader watches his employee's dramatic entrance with zero stress. Bisabiel elegantly holds his teacup, casually asking what exactly makes that piece of art such a massive red flag. Striding into the office, Song Un starts info, dumping all the crucial lore he just datamined about the painting. The hunter explains the entity is built totally different from any mob they've ever fought, especially those that suffocated players with toxic fake kindness. The most critical drop of the whole investigation hits when the curator firmly states that, above all else, the being stuck in the canvas genuinely believes it is a human. Even without knowing if the guy is just delusional or hard coping, the investigator warns that cases like this might look harmless in the early game. But if something glitches out and the creature loses it, the fallout from an attack would be an absolute server wipe for everyone nearby. The silver-haired dude stresses that the monster runs on a very strict karma system, judging players by its own rules, making it impossible to predict its aggro range if it spots a toxic player. Trying to find a safe exit strategy, Seong unsuggests shipping the painting off to the Hunters Association for lab testing, but the rich dude instantly shuts it down, which the employee admits he totally saw coming. Finding the panic hilarious, the leader sips his tea and comments that the entity just seems like a chill piece of art, ordering the curator to keep up the chats and find a way to officially introduce him to the guy. The quest gets even worse when the boss demands he figure out exactly what Gio's favorite items are, since it'd be super cringe to get left on read again during the intro. Dropping along, exhausted sigh, the hunter mutters that this is way too personal of a side quest, but accepts the mission since catering to his eccentric boss is basically his entire job description at the guild. The rich guy bursts out laughing, calling all his employees totally cold, while the silver-haired dude snaps back that this only happens because he specifically headhunts players with that exact build. Turns out, Bisabiel's famous hoarding addiction never stopped at just rare items. Literally every single employee in the gallery was handpicked and personally trained by him. The boss never lowered his standards when recruiting his hunters, proving that any NTD capable of putting pressure on in mind. Gaming this elite squad is a threat that needs to be taken seriously. The fact that the staff went into blind panic just by looking at that black, caped ghost proves without a doubt that the painted guy's spiritual power level is absolutely broken. Bowing before leaving the office, Song unpromises to drop regular patch notes, but warns it'll be super hard to figure out the monster's true stats quickly since there's zero data to compare it to. Staring at the leader sipping his drink, the investigator starts seriously doubting the guy's hidden agenda, briefly wondering if the rich dude isn't actively trying to trigger a massive disaster by messing with OP forces. Day 3 of the investigation boots up in the underground gallery, with the curator already parked in his chair facing the canvas, calmly asking if doesn't the entity get lonely locked up in there? Showing zero sadness, the MC replies straight up that being lonely isn't an issue in his current meta. Terrified he might have hit a weak spot on this weird monster, the hunter quickly apologizes, in case the question felt too intrusive. He backs up his curiosity by explaining that only verified staff usually drop down there, making him guess the ghost's late-night walks were just a cry for company. Calming the guy down, the young guy clarifies he actually prefers empty lobbies, curiously asking if the investigator was feeling weirded out by chatting with him like this. The curator instantly denies being uncomfortable, while the painting vents that he already had to talk way too much in his past life and always dreamed of a future where he didn't have to yap so much. Flashbacks of a chaotic past pop up, showing the guy's deep craving for an isolated safe zone where he'd never be managed, watched, or forced to care about the pressure of a loud society. Surrounded by sunlight and the lush green of his private sanctuary, he swears with total honesty that the infinite forest inside the frame is the absolute god-tier setup he always wanted. Processing this incredibly human confession, Song unstays quiet for a few seconds before hyping himself up to ask if the creature used to be a real-life player back in the day. The painting claps back immediately, claiming he is still a human, making the investigator stutter and scramble trying to fix his question without triggering the entity. The silver-haired dude rephrases, asking if before all this he was just a regular guy walking around trapped from an artwork, getting a super simple and direct yes from the guy. Nodding his head, the hunter mutters a quick, "Got it," while his brain goes into full alert, remembering perfectly well that humanoid monsters always split into two wildly different skill trees. The first type covers those brutal mobs that spawn purely as freaks in the dungeons and slowly evolved over time to wear a human-like skin. The second group is made of normal players who got dealt terrible RNG and mutated into dangerous beasts after getting fully corrupted by the Origin's dark energy. Analyzing the painting's sad vibes, the curator is 100% sure Gio falls into the second category, which perfectly explains why he keeps spamming the claim that he's still a normal person. This makes the case even more insane for the researchers, since monsters that keep their past life save files are usually cursed beasts totally consumed by toxic emotions. But, totally breaking the meta and all known data, that guy stuck in the portrait radiates an incredible peace that is almost contagious. Despite all this fake chill, the silver-haired dude notices it isn't exactly a fun energy to be around, feeling way more like a heavy, dragging silence similar to an endless funeral vibe. This weird atmosphere wrapping the old frame gives off an almost physical feeling that a massive tragedy went down there, like the portrait is a literal monument to someone's ultimate loss. Trying to clear his head of these heavy thoughts, the investigator switches topics and asks how the young guy handles the unavoidable boredom of being locked in one spot forever. The entity casually replies that he usually grabs a snack when he's got nothing to do, leaving the hunter completely stunned by the ridiculous idea of a painting that needs to eat. Ignoring the guy's shock, the young guy just doubles down, saying he really loves eating, while Song almost breaks character, pacing the hallway trying to process this absolute nonsense. Reading the guy's deadpan expressions, the curator fears this monster's taste in food might not be standard, internally praying the main course isn't anything toxic. Swallowing his own panic to keep control of the run, he carefully and politely asks what exact crafting method the portrait uses to prep his daily meals. The MC comfortably sits on the grass and starts breaking down his cooking tutorial, explaining it all starts just by thinking and picking the exact food he's craving. Right after locking in the choice, he gets to work farming all the fresh mats and does all the necessary prep on his rustic cabin counter. To finish the daily quest, he uses his own custom magical kitchen tools created on the canvas to cook the recipes like a total pro chef. The guy ends the explanation with the most casual tone ever, emphasizing again that he's just a normal human and finding it super weird that someone is asking so many questions about something as basic as cooking dinner. The silver-haired dude is left speechless by all this chill, thinking to himself if the ghost has any clue that justifying things with this insane logic only makes him look even less human to anyone watching. Catching on that the curator's silence meant total confusion, the young guy lets out a tired sigh, realizing his attempt to look like a standard NPC totally flopped. Deciding to just drop the lore on his complex existence, he finally leaks the secrets of his creative build, revealing the golden rule that absolutely everything he paints on his rustic canvas spawns into physical reality. Continuing the info dump, he lists that he can only interact with the outside server through the tree frame, and that the forest is an isolated, expanding open world, guessing the investigator wanted to know the level cap of his skills. Leaning against the magic tree's thick trunk, the MC confesses he feels the exact same way, admitting he's been wondering for ages just how high his power scaling can go in there. The image of a totally blank canvas sitting on his old, raw wood easel perfectly shows the infinite sandbox possibilities waiting for just a few brushstrokes to spawn in. A few basic charcoal lines of a branch full of round fruits magically start showing up on the clean surface, showing how his creative engine actually renders before things pop into reality. Riding the wave of the productive chat, the guy decides to ask his new investigator buddy for a tiny favor to run a live test, mentioning he also has some fun ways to enjoy life even while stuck in there. Caught off guard by the random request coming from the painting, Song asks with major interest what kind of buff a regular human like him could even provide to an entity. Staring at the visitor with an intense look, the artwork states point blank that the silver-haired dude has the exact skill set to bring some serious entertainment to the dead game routine of that infinite forest. A cold chill hits the hunter, who starts imagining the absolute worst, darkest rituals involving soul trading, dangerous HP donations, and shady terms of service where he'd lose way more than he should. Cutting through the curator's massive overreaction, the young guy just raises his hand and super politely asks the man to simply doodle an apple on the magical canvas screen. Unable to believe the ridiculously low-level quest, the investigator blinks confused, wanting to double-check if he should really draw on the priceless item, while the guy nods, thinking it shouldn't be that hard. Accepting the weird challenge from the peculiar monster, Song finally reaches out with confidence to pop open his work briefcase and grab the right gear for the job. Grabbing a premium pen from the case, the curator internally admits he hates having to mod an already finished masterpiece. Curious about the visitor's loadout, the MC asks if the guy always runs around carrying a full art kit. The silver-haired dude confirms it immediately, explaining he tries to keep his inventory packed with as many tools as possible. Justifying his sweaty playstyle, the hunter points out that it is way safer to be ready for any random glitch inside the gallery. The investigator's face goes tense, anxiously wondering what his tragic game over screen would have looked like if he didn't have the exact items the monster just asked for. With thick red lines scribbled directly onto the magic screen, an amateur sketch of a fruit takes shape on the enchanted paper. Pretty embarrassed by his own trash tier art skills, Song unscratches his head, admitting he couldn't draw a very aesthetic apple. However, the painted guy's hand reaches out, firmly grabbing the fully rendered fruit, giving a super genuine thanks for the visitor's massive carry. Completely blindsided by the physically impossible glitch that just happened right in front of him, the curator drops a confused mumble, totally lost. Wasting 0 frames, the young guy takes a massive bite out of the fresh apple, making a loud crunch audio echo through his private forest. The investigator's eye goes wide in absolute shock, totally unable to process what his own retinas are currently streaming. Staring at the chunks missing from the juicy fruit, the hunter's brain blue, screens, realizing the entity is literally eating a doodle. Absolutely flabbergasted, the guy points a shaky finger at the frame, screaming internally that the ghost just swallowed the sketch. Cold sweat drips down the pale face of the silver-haired dude, who flags this whole cooking anomaly as straight up unbelievable. Staring at the artwork with a mix of dread and absolute hype, Song unclaims loud and clear he has never seen a broken skill like that in his entire life. Flexing his custom snack, the young guy praises the fruit's god tier flavor, saying it is perfectly ripe and smells amazing. Staring seriously at the tip of his own pen, the curator tries to compute the nonsense of a cheap ink doodle gaining real world stats and flavor. Keeping his usual chill vibe, the MC doubles down again that he is just a normal human who currently exists inside a magic painting. Flashing the chewed-up apple core in his hand, he concludes that, using that exact same exploit, he can pull off plenty of impossible glitches in there. Watching the guy finish his snack, the investigator claps back internally that regular humans don't have the admin rights to break reality like that. Very interested in the visitor's silent reaction, the painting asks super politely if the hunter is finding all of this fascinating. The silver-haired dude nods in agreement, confessing with laser focus that he finally cracked how the isolated gameplay loop actually works. Riding the good vibes, the painting decides to drop a fair reward for the guy's awesome help with the apple drawing quest. The curator gets totally confused by the random payment prompt, anxiously wondering what bizarre drop is coming next. Back in his peaceful world, the guy grabs his color palette, admitting how clutch Song was for helping out a weird portrait with such good energy. Surrounded by the chill lighting of the infinite forest, the MC gets ready to craft something highly exclusive using his busted skills. Sitting comfortably in front of his rustic setup, he flashes back to the shiny gemstones he drew a while ago to test his own level cap. The memories show the thick, magical pafted from those jewels, bringing back the insane feeling that the drawing was literally breathing on the paper. The young guy explains he can spawn unthinkable items in there, proving nothing is locked, which is why he got curious to test the cross, play with the outside reality. Outside in the dark gallery, Song waits patiently right in front of the frame, holding his work pen with serious anticipation. Watching his coworker chilling outside, the guy happily concludes his read on the dude's good karma was spot on, even though he knows there are still strict rules to follow. A yellow system window pops up in the MC's face, forcing him to pay back the hunter's favor and setting a strict countdown timer for the transfer. Out of nowhere, the thick border of the old frame starts glowing aggressively, magically spitting a blindingly shiny gemstone straight into the real world. The curator reaches out with shaky hands to catch the unknown drop, which floats gently, surrounded by an insanely intense and pure pink aura. Flashing a subtle smile on his painted face, the young guy smoothly announces that the super shiny rock is the promised loot. Scanning the jewel's flawless crystalline geometry, Song, on his mind blown realizing the guy just spawned an ultra-rare mineral using nothing but ink. The hunter's investigative eyes shine with the reflection of the glowing rock, intensely wondering what exact class of high gem team is sitting in his hands. Keeping it 100% real with his new bro, the MC admits he has no clue what it's called, but guesses it spawned from somewhere super deep and insanely hot. The guy's creative engine renders an image of melting heat near the planet's core, guessing the jewel just passively holds that massive temperature. Feeling the heavy energy radiating from the mystery stone in the dark, the investigator hits the undeniable conclusion that this portrait is definitely not a monster. Day 3 of the late night geowatch is officially cleared with a massive W and logged into the top secret files. Right after, chillin' in the guild leader's luxury office, the curator flexes the glowing jewel and starts his tense debrief, dropping lore about the Great Origin. Confirming the theory he cooked up from his latest data mining, the hunter states that the painting has an undeniable link to this OP higher power. The investigator breaks down the origin as a broken, transcendent force, basically the server admin managing the universe's balance and hard-coding the rules for every dimension. He heavily reflects on the nightmare server crashes of the past, linking this immeasurable cosmic energy directly to the dungeons that almost wiped Earth 30 years ago. During his super tense lore drop, Song mentions the terrifying myths of a brand new, chaotic dimension spawning straight out of the Origin's unstable code. Veteran hunters who run these zones know damn well that bizarre mobs usually only spawn inside these randomly generated corrupted dungeons. But the investigator makes it crystal clear that while normal beasts spawn from corrupted dungeons, a true child of the Origin is born straight from its pure source code. Standing dead center in the perfectly lit office, he explains to the boss that these two magical builds completely different spawn conditions and stats. Listening to the patch notes in total silence, Bisabeel grips the crafted jewel with massive interest while his employee takes a breath to keep dumping the portrait's lore. The curator drops the bombshell that the guy stuck in the canvas actually broke the game and managed to create perfect living entities just to keep him company. On day 6 of his solo grind in the underground gallery, the silver-haired dude goes back to hanging out with the magic painting, keeping up his streak of friendly chats. Rocking a super chill aura, the MC excitedly shares that he had a blast drawing some cute little birds to build his new squad. The tiny mobs, made entirely of pure water and energy, fly freely and happily through the permanently sunny sky of his private canvas sanctuary. Blown away by the massive swarm of pets flying over the green forest, the investigator asks in shock if the young guy hand drew every single one of them with his brush. The guy proudly confirms he painted around 100 birds total, laughing as he complains they are huge yappers, even though they literally don't have vocal cords. In a shallow, crystal clear lake, the birds group up to vibe and splash in the fresh water, showing off some insanely realistic flock AI. The young guy passionately details that the little birds love swallowing colorful berries to customize their transparent bodies, finding their unique aesthetic choices hilarious. Hearing that ridiculous breakdown, Song-un is amazed, concluding those elemental pets aren't just pretty doodles, but actual living, breathing NPCs. Staring at the painting in silent respect, the hunter wonders if those birds have souls, absolutely convinced this god-tier power does not belong to any standard mob. Hyper, focused on cracking the final mystery, the curator mutters to himself with a hand on his chin, deep, thinking the insane complexity of that ink world. The meta-theory says a true child of the origin doesn't have an ego, which would make it completely impossible for it to hold a civilized, human conversation like this. Breaking down these massive plot holes, the investigator points out that Geo is a painting with a human consciousness, but it actively hacks the reality of the outside server. However, the silver-haired dude admits he doesn't detect any oppressive, god-like aggro from the frame, officially debunking the theory that he's some sort of deity. Bringing up the terrifying power to literally craft destinies and full memory files on paper, Song unseriously asks if the guy could spawn a real human. He keeps pressing politely, arguing that if the entity can solo dev everything in his private lobby, pulling off that impossible glitch should be doable too. Looking slightly down with major sad vibes, the MC answers honestly that it might be technically possible to hit that milestone, but he has zero desire to even attempt it. Backing up his firm choice, he claims that playing God and creating people feels super wrong, being way too OP for someone who just sees himself as a standard guy. Spiritual hologram walks through the forest, perfectly illustrating the monstrous risk of bringing a human soul back to life through art. Asking the investigator for a super personal solid, the guy genuinely suggests he stop treating him like some VIP entity, since keeping it basic is the best strat. Wrapping up the intense interrogation, Song-un grabs his notes and walks away from the artwork, tossing a "will do" over his shoulder to log the request. Back to the bait in the office, the curator checks his boss's ethics, angrily asking if he seriously plans to hide the painting from the National Association. Flashing a cocky, troll smile, the guild leader claps back that the only thing they datamined was the portrait's backstory, completely ignoring its broken hidden skills. The eccentric rich guy shows off a shameless, villainous grin, making his absolute obsession with the dangerous entity he sniped at the auction totally obvious. Hard rejecting the boss's totally reckless play, the curator insists firmly that only the Hunters Association has the lab gear to safely analyze the portrait and protect the server. Dropping his employee's name, the guild leader holds his ground against the suggestion to hand over the painting. He instantly asks if the curator forgot the actual reason he was hired to play on this team in the first place. Bisabiel throws his arms wide in the middle of the luxury office, making it obvious he doesn't give a crap about world-ending threats. He just wants a masterpiece, not a weapon. Stepping closer, the rich dude justifies that this exact toxic obsession is why he founded the Collectors Guild to begin with. Staring out the massive glass window, he confesses he has zero pride as a hunter, but his ego as an art fanatic is absolutely massive. For a real deal collector, a top-tier masterpiece isn't meant to ward off bad vibes or give you sweet dreams. The true endgame is just the hype of uncovering the hidden lore behind that ancient painting. And with that, the ultimate goal is to physically protect that exact lore with his own two hands. Listening to his boss's unhinged speech, Song-un looks visibly drained and frustrated. But the leader's sharp eyes burn with insane intensity, exposing his true, obsessive nature. Totally hyped by the Chaos, Bisabiel warns they could never actually stop that magic entity anyway. His frame stays mounted on the dark wall, surrounded by an uncrackable aura of mystery. Sizing up the threat, the rich guy compares the painting to a natural disaster, pointing out their massive RNG luck is being able to literally chat with something that OP and friendly. The rare gems and magic mats dropped by the painting act as physical proof of this chill alliance. Checking out the stashed loot, the guild boss officially ranks this whole bizarre run as an absolute miracle. No matter what the monster's true identity ends up being, Trashing a miracle like this would be a massive throw in the collector's eyes. Shook by the cold hard logic, the curator finally cracks why the boss went all in for the winning bid at the auction. Knowing the portrait would get leaked to the outside world eventually anyway, they had to speedrun the purchase. The rich guy bought the masterpiece specifically to prevent a server-wiping catastrophe from falling into the wrong hands. Chilling by the window, the guild leader brags about his top-tier passive skill of seeing way past the surface. Because of that, the perfect meta is just treating the magic entity like a regular dude, since the entity himself heavily buys into that lore. Inside his cabin, the MC keeps grinding his peaceful solo routine, prepping his daily meals. His power scaling is so broken that his creations literally spawn their own AI in the form of glowing golden birds. Pouring a drink, Bizabil tells his subordinate to stop being so close-minded, because they are dealing with a totally ascended level of existence. The investigator just listens on mute, while the boss loudly confirms that the guy in the frame is insanely wholesome. The mystery entity holds zero toxicity and absolutely hates griefing other players. Looking at the chill vibes radiating from the rustic canvas, it's obvious the guy's kindness is legit, since he doesn't hold grudges even when put in super awkward lobbies. The mysterious artist plays by the rules, treating everyone with flawless manners and literally dreading dealing any damage to others. Song-un doesn't quite get the whole fear of hurting people thing, since for a monster that buffed, deleting a human would be easier than stepping on an ant. Ignoring the employee's confusion, the boss doubles down on the art's kindness, leaving the curator puzzled on how he datamined all that without ever exchanging a single word with the portrait. Full of ego, the rich guy flexes that he only needs to lock eyes once to download all those stats, demanding that exact level of skill to lead the guild. The city's night skyline marks the end of the super tense meeting in the building's top floor. Getting his final quest log, Song-un is told to just be a solid chat buddy for the painting, without digging too deep into the lore to avoid aggroing a disaster. The jump scare hits right after, when the leader orders him to take the painting on an IRL walking tour outside every once in a while. Totally baffled by the troll idea, the investigator asks if the boss is actually being serious. Waving the employee off, the rich dude claims he totally trusts his judgment to pull off the escort mission. Gripping his briefcase, the hunter realizes all his curator level stressing was totally pointless against the collector's wild ambitions. Taking the L, he drops his head and swears to trust the higher-up's call. After the subordinate dips, Bizabil chills on the sofa, showing off his mysterious eyes that can see way past standard human rendering limits. The eccentric billionaire's ultimate endgame is to drop the absolute best VIP service his org can provide to keep Geo happy. Outside the massive HQ, the investigator walks the dark city streets deep, thinking about the massive lore dump that just happened. A relieved smile cracks on the hunter's face, internally saying thanks that he didn't hand such a chill creature over to the association. He knows damn well that the brutal lab tests run by the national org are basically just straight-up torture for captured mobs. Walking solo under the moonlight, the flashbacks of his old gardener class come rushing back. Back in the day, an origin entity known as a garden picked a human to manage it, getting full dedication from that good-hearted support player. Running that sacred zone directly nerfed the difficulty scaling of the dangerous dungeons, making the gardeners super proud of their crazy grind. Because they were practically co-op partners every day, it was literally impossible not to catch feelings for the magical cores of those gardens. Snapping out of his daydream, the hunter spots a classic street food cart selling hot, traditional snacks. The memory of the magic portrait, admitting how much he loved food, instantly overtakes the investigator's brain on that freezing sidewalk. Not skipping the chance, he walks up to the street vendor to cop some snacks. Swiping his card for the food, Song-un privately agrees with his boss's meta, deciding to treat the painting purely as a basic dude. The amazing smell of the bagged sweets works as the ultimate prop to help keep that human illusion running smoothly. Arriving back at the underground gallery, he flashes the paper bag to the painting and casually asks the guy's level. Age. Super direct, the MC hanging on the wall answers casually that he's 29. Hearing the stats of an entity that could literally wipe the server, the curator blinks, trying to process the file, since he himself is 33. Shook by the reveal, he accidentally blurts out that he thought the guy was way too young to be in that kind of boss position. The comment totally flops, making the guy clap back, offended that he knows he's got an older-looking skin, while the hunter scrambles to fix the lag. Honestly, finding out a walking global catastrophe hasn't even hit level 30 is super tough to compute. Staring at the frame, the investigator wonders if this age stat isn't just another glitch in the monster's bizarre code, until he gets hit with a reverse UNO card when the painting asks his age. Answering the prompt, the investigator drops that he's 33, getting super awkward when the artwork hypes up his youthful, well-maintained skin. The chat flows super smoothly when the curator reaches out to offer one of the sweets as a tiny drop. Listening to the guy request they drop all the formal tags, since he's older, the hunter lets out a laugh, finding it hilarious getting comfort commands from a mystical being. Totally giving into this random duo run, Song unpromises to switch to casual chat from that moment on. Time speedruns and day 17 of the investigation hits, strictly focused on the insane mechanics of the OP origin that runs the server. The researcher logs in his brain that the dreaded magic gardens are basically just tiny, vital cogs in a massive, endlessly running machine. Listening to all this heavy theory on mute, the MC praises the epic lore, catching the exact same compliment right back. The good vibes keep rolling, with the entity pointing out the insane difficulty curve it must be to admin one of those massive gardens. Showing a lot of empathy for his buddy's toxic grind, the painted guy asks if this high-risk role is really a hard, locked requirement. Tugging at his glove, the investigator vents that the chosen players have zero free will to dodge the quest, even if they try to re-roll their class. Wrapping up the sad vent session, he hands over a little bag packed with rare seeds directly to the magical hand clipping out of the screen. Even after spending so many days tracking his buddy's routine, the curator still gets a mini jump scare seeing human limbs glitching out of the paper. Catching the slight lag in the hunter's posture, Geo inspects the seeds and asks softly if the whole situation is getting too heavy for him. Resetting his posture fast, Song unswears the jump scare was minor and that he can tank all this weirdness just fine. Hyped by the chat, the researcher closes his eyes and pictures the stunning render of a massive glacier, proving how awesome he thinks having a personal garden is. On mute, the mysterious guy in the painting just listens, holding his chill, unreadable stare while soaking up the weight of those real words. Getting the friend's rough lobby situation, the guy from the painting confirms he totally grasps the massive weight of that carry. Holding the glowing seed carefully, the investigator echoes the vibe, saying he completely shares that exact same feeling. The cutscene swaps to the eccentric Bizabiel, who drops a mysterious line asking if his employee actually understands the meta. The guild leader keeps a sharp, sweaty player look, making it obvious his endgame is way bigger than it seems. Back in the basement, the hunter politely asks if the entity wouldn't want to log out for a bit and explore the outside map. Shook by the random invite, the painted guy repeats the prompt, wanting to make sure it's literally just a casual sightseeing run. It's super obvious that dropping a direct party invite to an origin-linked entity is a highly toxic move that shouldn't be thrown around for fun. Since the mysterious artist's true hidden stats are still unknown, nobody has a clue what kind of server lag he'd cause by interacting with reality. But the leader figured it'd be impossible to ban the creature anyway, so the big brain strat is to beta test things early. Getting back to the chat, Song notes the guy is kind of a noob with modern society and offers to carry him on a personal tour. Thinking it over for a sec, the MC decides it might actually be time to try jumping back into a public lobby and accepts the silver-haired dude's offer. Keeping it efficient, the guy instantly wants to know the best server time for them to run this IRL raid. Meanwhile, on the inside, he drops the jewel next to one of his magical birds, admitting his brain is currently overloaded with stress. Hoeing the dirt in his backyard, he flashes back to how the NPCs outside seem totally petrified just being near him. Since his powers actively glitch reality, the young guy guesses there's a massive gap in how normal humans actually render things. He noticed that when the staff looked at him, they seemed zoned out, like they were staring at an unrendered asset because of that perception gap. Fixing his hat, the guy admits that panic response was a bit of a shock early on, but swears he didn't let the griefing actually tilt him. Watering his fresh little crops, he decides he needs to patch this perception glitch ASAP since he agreed to party up with the investigator. Finishing the manual grind in the dirt, the MC wipes his sweaty forehead, breathing a sigh of relief and looking pretty hyped about the results. Admiring his aesthetic new garden, he celebrates the successful build, quoting an old meme about how if you don't grind, you don't get to eat. The young guy dusts off his fit to get clean while his little golden bird watches him curiously. Giving the cute mob a little boop, he jokes that the pet is already doing its job just by being that aesthetically pleasing. It's clear this special unit leveled up enough to actually understand him, unlike the basic water birds, which hypes him up to pick a top-tier name for it. Taking a chill walk down his forest trail, he notices the pet's good vibes and smilingly asks if the idea sounds like a W. Looking at the yellow body holding the precious gem, the young guy pitches the name, Golden Boy, for his new familiar. But the very next frame, the guy himself realizes that was an absolute trash tier name and drops a face full of pure cringe. Seeing the pet's equally unimpressed face, he admits even the mob hated the pitch and confesses he spouts a lot of nonsense sometimes. Lifting the glowing pet with both hands, he offers the name, Hi Honey. since its little body radiates an insanely sweet and vibrant color palette. The pet nuzzles into his face, melting with hype, making the MC thank it for being so chill about accepting such a basic tag. Back inside the rustic cabin, he decides to wrap up his landscape renders so he can finally log off for a well-deserved night of sleep after the heavy grind. Locked in on his art, the MC grips the brush tight, getting ready to drop the final polish on the canvas. With fast, cracked movements, he spreads the paint, rendering an insanely realistic ocean packed with violent waves. Right then, the system panel aggressively pops up on screen, dropping a notification that it's scanning for the exact dimension linked to that art. Glitchy flashes of red ruins and shadowy figures spam his vision, teasing chunks of completely unmapped realities. A terrifying demonic boss model stands out in the visions, proving the absolute extreme difficulty zones lurking in these magic-generated servers. The system pings again with a massive glow around the wooden easel, dropping the W announcement that the correct dimension has been successfully locked in. Totally out of stamina from the creative grind, the guy just flops onto the cabin's soft bed, instantly logging out into sleep mode. The night passes smoothly through the infinite sanctuary, swapping to a chill, bright morning around the crystal lake. Opening his eyes slowly, the young guy wakes up totally refreshed, ready to tackle another day of peak cozy gameplay. But he gets a massive jump scare when a giant window randomly spawns right in his face, demanding he clear his backlog of new notifications. Scratching his head looking confused, the MC grumbles, wondering what kind of troll update the magic system is pushing first thing in the morning. Checking the patch notes, he sees his ocean painting got officially tagged by the magic AI as the Breathing Sea. Scrolling through the glowing meanness surrounded by options, he reads out loud the totally random names assigned to his other completed artworks. Hand on his chin, the guy figures the game engine just auto-generated titles for all the landscapes he finished the day before. Reading the sketchy warnings about loading into other dimensions and syncing up with compatible players, he heavily doubts if this is even remotely safe for a human to try. His golden pet lands on his shoulder, seemingly trying to cure the master's anxiety debuff in the face of so many high-risk options. Swapping to a much more chill stance, the young guy smiles, deciding this whole dimensional multiverse feature actually looks pretty fun in the end. Giving little Honey a poke, he jokes that the system stole his naming rights specifically because it knew his naming tier list is garbage. Refocusing on the screens, the MC gets super curious trying to decode what finding a compatible player to sync with actually means in the meta. Spotting a help button on the UI, he insta-clicks it, praising the menu for actually having decent tooltips. The breakdown reveals this compatible player acts like a cheat code to help easily navigate dimensions that have literally zero map data. The lore drop explains that out of the infinite entities out there, the target whose core stats perfectly match his will be auto-selected. The crazy part is, if he gets the okay, he can literally hijack the dude's body and soul to free roam the new server. Checking out the suggested profiles for Giovanni and Argio, the young guy is stunned, questioning if the system's stupid matchmaking rule was just finding names that shared his own letters. A deep silence hits while the guy tries to find some actual logic in the code, feeling like the system totally dumbed things down. Trashing the meme theory, he seriously concludes the matchmaking must have run deep aura compatibility checks to find a perfect match. Crossing his arms, he figures the sync rate was perfectly min-maxed, finding it all so hype that he swears he'll never be bored again. Right after his sharp eyes lock onto the dark, edgy artwork of the creepy City of the Void he designed himself. The shock is massive when a warning flashes saying the zone doesn't actually exist, making the MC realize he just successfully coded an entirely new custom server from scratch. Hitting the confirm button, he drops a heavy sigh, joking that he can already feel his cozy casual run getting totally griefed by all this chaos. Looking closely at his glowing sidekick, the young guy declares that life is honestly goated, and skipping this epic event would be a massive throw. At that critical moment, a yellow notification pops up on the UI reminding him about the massive perception glitch he wanted to patch so badly. Flashing a confident smirk, the guy flexes to his pet saying his gamer instincts never miss and always point him to the W. To push forward, the MC's hand clicks straight onto the mysterious Giovanni's profile, treating it as the perfect excuse to launch the beta test. Already sucked into the dimensional loading screen floating in the void, he tells the bird to blindly trust his crazy strats as the run starts. The fast travel shakes everything, making him heavily roast the magic transit system's garbage servers, while noticing his pet totally despawn mid-jump. Reading the rival confirmed message inside Giovanni's mental lobby, he praises the system's clean UI, even though he has absolutely no clue where he dropped. Checking out the freezing, pure white map around him, the guy concludes this bizarre spirit world literally looks like an abandoned horror hospital. Breaking the clinical hallway's dead silence, an elegant, long, haired blonde figure suddenly spawns, walking straight toward him. The stranger's eyes show an unbreakable Zen vibe, rocking delicate features and premium aristocratic skins that instantly grab attention. Scanning the dude who just rendered in front of him, the MC lets out a gasp of pure shock when he spots a massive lore detail. Standing up fast, Gio greets the blonde politely, absolutely floored when he realizes the guy's face is a literal 1:1 copy of his own. Flashing a warm, welcoming smile, the spiritual clone seems super chill about the random player dropping into his brain lobby. Surrounded by an almost god-like aura, the beautiful blonde guy does the intro, proudly dropping his tag as Giovanni from the elite Batland clan. Hand on his chest, the dark-haired guy returns the respect, dropping his own name, internally concluding he finally met his legendary, compatible player. Getting a good look at the noble's face, the MC jokes that if he rolled a foreign build, he'd definitely have that exact same skin. Never dropping his elegant posture, the blonde smiles warmly and states they probably share a ton of other hidden stats too. Gio shakes his hands, denying it fast, internally admitting he could never pull off a perfectly warm smile like that without looking totally awkward. The truth is, his resting face has always been terrible, causing endless misunderstandings with NPCs, thinking he was carrying some massive tragic backstory. Some even gossiped in the lobbies, assuming he must have an edgy, dangerous villain origin story. But at the end of the day, his dark and brooding face was literally just him trying to plan out his dinner while grocery shopping. Giovanni finds that worry super wholesome and honest, flashing back to the students he used to teach, promising the guy will now be able to smile just like him. Hearing that, the MC asks if this whole sync feature, the system warned about, is actually a legit mechanic. He clarifies he'd asked for permissions first, but admits he thought the blonde would end up getting his body and soul totally wiped in the process. With that, Giovanni asks if the guy isn't feeling scared or salty, that he's basically stealing his whole account just to explore a new map. Flashing a chill smile, the noble quickly calms the visitor down, guaranteeing with 100% certainty that it's not account theft because he's already had a game over. The spirit drops the lore that his soul already fast traveled back to the sun ages ago while his body turned to dust and got buried. But a second later, he patches his own dialogue, remembering that his body never actually turned to dust or got a proper burial. The reason for that tragic ending is that the entire map of his home server got completely swallowed by the ocean. Gio is totally stunned by the info dump, trying to verify the lore, while the blonde confirms his home was wiped by the water and hit a total dead end. Keeping his guard up, the MC stays silent, downloading the massive weight of the story he just got hit with. He then points out that a total server wipe is way too heavy of a lore drop to dump on someone you just met. But the blonde begs him to listen. Accepting the quest, the guy focuses on the noble's voice explaining that the only things left in his world were the mermaids hiding in the deep ocean zones. Giovanni breaks down that their planet shrunk down like a tiny game board, transforming into a hard, locked dungeon with super strict rules. Hearing the word dungeon, Gio instantly flashes back to the Sweaty Stories investigator song, undropped about those dimensions spawning during the cataclysm. The spirit admits that concept didn't exist in his meta, but the second their minds linked up, he finally got that they both run on the exact same core code. The two existences mirror each other in a spiritual lobby, proving the insanely deep connection that just went live between the human and the noble from another dimension. Even with this crazy link, the blonde makes sure to clarify they aren't the exact same player, just two entities who miraculously rolled the same stats. The dark-haired young guy keeps absorbing every word super seriously, grasping the insane complexity of this magical crossover event. Wrapped in a soft glow, Giovanni announces that, from this frame forward, his soul will merge with the visitors like a respawn mechanic, so they can farm new memories together. He adds that this exploit will let him live forever inside the origin, which leaves the MC totally confused by the terminology. Catching the lag, the noble realizes this concept is probably still wild to the guy, even though he literally lives in the middle of it. Trying to connect the dots, Gio asks if his forest cabin is the so-called core origin his hunter bro kept hyping up, and the blonde explains that's just a player-made tag. The reality is nobody knows the actual name of this cosmic admin, or what its insane rules and true render look like. Because of that, Giovanni just sees himself as a super humble soul who accepted the random party invite to sync up with the young painter's storyline. Clasping his own hands in a highly polite emote, the noble spirit drops one final side quest request, if the run allows it. The MC listens closely as Giovanni begs from the bottom of his heart for the guy to look after the sun god of his ruined server. Feeling the absurd weight of that quest, the guy panics, claiming he's just a basic human main, but the blonde smiles, remembering he used to think the exact same way before he logged off. Explaining the critical state of the server, the priest reveals that without the origin, a god just gets memory wiped if they lose all their followers, which has him super stressed about his master. The only solid he's asking for is that Geo keeps the deity's memory active in the cache, chatting with it every now and then so it doesn't get lonely. And as a W reward for this noble carry, the guy would get full admin rights to borrow that god's massive power. Flashing a radiant smile of pure faith, the blonde swears on his honor as a true light priest that this won't be a heavy debuff for the visitor. The young guy scratches his chin rating the random quest, thinking this basically just sounds like keeping a lonely boomer company, which he's been a pro at since his college days. Super relieved by the highs, the noble lets out a genuine laugh and hands his god's fate over to his new bro, while Geo asks if there's any other loot he wants. The MC privately admits that babysitting a deity sounded like a troll idea at first, but smiling for boomers is easy mode for someone who used to live in the woods. The blonde goes silent for a quick second, looking like he's gathering the stamina to drop his final and most painful quest request. Cutscenes of mermaids swimming in a magical zone flash, while the priest mumbles a very specific tag. Geo repeats the name, wanting to know who this area NPC is. With look packed with heavy sad vibes, Giovanni reveals that's the username of a super precious student he used to carry back in the day. The wrecked scenery of the city swallowed by the dark ocean renders, while the master drops a desperate plea for the guy to bring a permanent game over to his poor student. Back to the bright, chill vibes of the forest, the sanctuary's peaceful loop seems totally unbothered by its creator's mental fast travel. The little golden bird named Honey idles patiently right next to the glowing gem left on the desk. But out in the real-world lobby, the MC's avatar is slumped in a chair, drowning in a heavy, toxic darkness. The magic UI logs the noble's new impossible quests, chat up a sun god, and deliver a tragic ending to the Little Mermaid. The magic pet detects the massive aggro targeting its master as an unbearable freeze starts hacking into the room's temperature. Shaking violently in the dark gallery, Geo tries to text his pet that he's fine, even while feeling an agonizing pain tearing his HP down from the inside out. With the sync rate hitting the first 1%, his brain starts crashing, wondering whose terrifying death loop he's experiencing. Gripping his own arm tight, he spams that it's gonna be okay, while the tips of his dark hair start glitching into blonde. Flashbacks of the past hijack the guy's screen all at once, streaming the chill days when the priest used to stare at the ocean with a kid. But the memory gets instantly overridden by the absolute horror of the noble drowning in the ocean's dark abyss, while Geo keeps denying the damage ticks. Tears stream down the spirit's face, while the save files of his tragic ending completely nuke the sensed human's mental health. On the wall, the painting that used to be Geo now renders the calm avatar of Giovanni spectating everything from the frame. Absolutely drained by the data transfer, the young guy whispers that he doesn't regret his dialogue choices one bit. With his hair now fully blonde, signaling the sync is 100% complete, he flashes a tired smile declaring he had a great run. The scene hard cuts to the freezing night of the modern city, with a mystery voice complaining about how trash this whole meta is. Power, walking with expensive shoes. Someone drops a cryptic line about how this zone is way too oversaturated with sunlight. The street lamp flickers on the empty road, dropping a heavy mystery aesthetic on that busy night. The full moon dominates the dark sky over the corporate skyscrapers, while the Hunter server continues its silent grind. In a faraway office, the fast fingers of someone rocking expensive ring speed type a message on a glowing RGB keyboard. Flexing a super cocky smirk, the rich guy Bizabil decides that the new patch notes on security will be more than enough to block any server wipes. The guild leader's monitor displays an official company ping, locking in strict TOS for interacting with the new hooded employee named Geo. The eccentric collector's sharp, sweaty player eyes glow with hidden strats on how to manage that lethal mob in his lobby. The next morning, the org's HQ is totally popping off with the staff gossiping about the bizarre new server rules pinned to the boards. Through the glass halls, groups group up to debate the new guidelines banning anyone from declining name exchanges or loot drops from the new coworker. Some workers scan the papers totally shook, admitting they've never seen such a meme-tier, overly detailed hiring contract in their lives. The tea is spilling everywhere in the lobbies, with the squad quickly figuring out that this cloaked noob is obviously the same creepy ghost from the old rumors. Analyzing the data closely, the guild's hunters start questioning if this guy is actually a legit human player or some wildly broken boss mob. The girls on the team point out that the eccentric boss would never post troll updates on the official company feed, leaving them totally lost on how to read this madness. Already losing their patience with the yapping, another group decides it's not even worth the stamina to try and decode their crazy boss's true endgame. The general consensus is that this hooded, glowing-eyed dude is nowhere near human, but the memo is a hard order for everyone to play along and use flawless manners so they don't aggro the monster. Reading the unhinged rules on the memo, one of the employees is left totally speechless, just staring at the printed sheet. Another coworker next to him checks his phone notifications, also failing to compute that entire hiring circus. Super tilted by the sketchy situation, the guard mutters that trying to datamine this ghost is just gonna drop a massive head HD buff on them. Trying to look at the bright side, the guy mentions that at least they get paid decent overtime, but the girl claps back saying she'd rather take the pay cut and go home to walk her dog. Down the hall, two guards figure out that the noob is basically Shrew, Dinger's human. Everything perfectly clicked once they linked the ghost rumors to that high-tier painting in the 5th basement. Gripping his radio, a security guard guesses the leader must have calculated it was safe to let the monster chill, suggesting everyone just follow the walkthrough perfectly so they don't get their accounts deleted. Walking through the corridor at that exact frame, Seong-un overhears all the staff's voice comms without jumping into the chat. The employees instantly spot the curator's intimidating aura and drop a respectful bow while he keeps walking on mute. Right after, the female staff hug it out, super relieved remembering that the dangerous portrait is strictly the investigator's escort mission, praying he never pawns the aggro off onto them. Walking with his head down and his brain full of stress, the hunter grumbles that he urgently needs to buy his squad a premium dinner to make up for the toxic work environment. Already inside his luxury office, the eccentric leader hypes up the flawless team he drafted, super stoked he managed the new guy's login without triggering any internal PvP. Busting out an excited laugh, the rich guy trolls his subordinates for hating overtime more than they value their own HP, which is exactly why they didn't even question the noob's bizarre spawn. Chilling in his chair, the guild boss concludes that hard coding respect boundaries ensures the monster will never get griefed, preventing any surprise boss fights inside the HQ. The curator listens to the speech with a deadpan face and agrees that this high-risk strat might actually block internal server crashes. But remembering the overwhelming boss aura the entity radiates, the silver-haired dude warns that to avoid mass civilian panic, they desperately need to gaslight the public into thinking the guy is just an S-class hunter. Resting his face on his hand, the eccentric leader mutters, wondering how normal NPCs are gonna react when an OP hunter just randomly drops into the server out of nowhere. He points out that nowadays, top-tier hunters get as much media hype as K-pop idols, guessing this fake hero's lore is gonna go viral instantly. Holding a rock, solid posture in front of his higher-up, the investigator declares that leaking this fake patch note to the whole country is realistically their best play right now. The meta theory is that an origin entity's danger scaling is directly tied to how big its legend is, so nerfing his lore down to a human level makes the server infinitely safer for everyone. Bizabiel thinks this strat of shrinking the threat's hitbox is absolutely fascinating and trusts his employees' shot calling, revealing he already booked an exclusive Tamer hotel, just in case things go south. With eyes shining with hype, the collector promises to cover any property damage costs, ordering the hunter to make sure the artwork gets the absolute best IRL walking tour of its life. Gulping hard, the silver-haired dude gets super tense at the mention of massacres, remembering he's the sole tank assigned to the front lines to escort the monster. The elevator's metal doors slide shut slowly while the guy prays to the devs that his boss's chaotic RNG wishes don't trigger and the field trip ends in peace. Finally hitting the 5th basement, he lets out an exhausted sigh and admits his only actual hope of surviving the run is to blindly trust the painting's flawless, polite programming. Calm and highly punctual footsteps echo through the dead, silent hall, announcing the curator's arrival at the final boss room. Hitting the back of the dimly lit hall, the investigator freezes mid-step when he spots the mystery figure in the black cloak already waiting for him outside the frame. Completely jump-scared by the early spawn, the hunter drops a confused mumble, totally failing to process the render in front of him. Scanning the hooded guy from a distance, Seong-un instantly detects that something is massively fundamentally different about the aura he's giving off. The entity turns its head showing pure Zen, asking softly if he accidentally left his guide idling in the dark for too long. The investigator's shock spikes when he realizes even the creature's edgy voice lines have completely changed, sounding way more natural and chill than before. Seong-un is mind blown, realizing that the crushing, suffocating spiritual pressure and robotic tone the entity used to flex have just randomly vanished. Hearing the hunter's confusion about this drastic character swap, the mystery guy casually replies that he just tweaked a few settings before logging in. Blinking a few times to compute the data, the silver-haired dude repeats the word totally lost, having no clue what kind of magic hack makes someone completely rewrite their personality. Radiating a warm glow, the young guy explains he just nerfed his own presence so he wouldn't terrify the street NPCs, noting his strat clearly worked perfectly on the guide. The truth is, 2 whole days have passed since the intense spiritual sync event, and the MC stayed isolated in his private lobby, getting used to the new skill tree. On his right hand, the amulet he scored from the magic link glows softly, dropping a cozy warmth across the rustic room. He reflects on the insane glitch of finding a perfectly compatible soul in a dream and getting direct TOS approval to inherit that entire save file. Figuring out his magic system's mechanics, the guy notes he has to clear vital main quest to permanently download that healer priest's core essence. Checking his slow progression bar, he admits that letting the noble's charismatic personality take the wheel would make the whole runway faster. Even so, Gio decides to grind at his own pace, watching the glowing UI show the sync rate hit 4% and slowly ticking up. As the percentage climbs, the MC reports that intense cutscenes of memories he never actually played start flooding his brain like old save files from a past life. All the sadness, fears, and extreme empathy of the Grand Priest smoothly merge with the tired soul of the lonely young painter. The lore confirms just how absurdly kind that magical noble was, a pure soul who spent all his days buffing and healing his faction. Besides the infinite good vibes, the blonde carried a broken charisma stat capable of charming any NPC, acting as a visionary pushing hard for a worldwide peace patch. Deep down, all that Master really wanted in life was to enjoy top-tier food and a chill routine with the clan he loved so much. This absolute legend of a person, with a pure heart and ready to sacrifice himself without a second thought for the greater good, was the myth known as Giovanni Batlan. Jumping out of bed hyped, Gio thinks it's a bit trippy feeling his brain running on dual-core mode, but promises that taking back full admin control of his body is easy mode. He quickly figures out that equipping the priest's peaceful, warm aura was the system's miracle patch to fix the glitch of terrifying humans on the street. By perfectly aligning with this hero's core data, his avatar undergoes some biological tweaks, bringing old mortal survival mechanics back online. The massive W is that, by downloading this new soul's human traits, his hunger bar finally works again, so he can actually taste his own crafted loot. On top of the awesome craving for sweets, the basic requirement of logging a few solid hours of sleep per night also gets patched back into his tired system. And to his absolute eternal frustration, the routine bathroom side quests are back to being mandatory in his chill forest life. Sipping his steaming tea at the dining table, the young guy concludes that by broadcasting this soft energy, he can easily pass for a random casual in the city. Cutting back to the underground hall, the entity warns the curator he's starving and politely suggests they speedrun the start of the tour ASAP. Snapping out of his emotional shock fast, the investigator points the way, completely disoriented by how polite and human this formidable boogeyman is acting. Walking through the building's premium hallways, the silver-haired dude thinks to himself that this creature's pacifist routine is way too surreal for him to actually buy into. He realizes he was stressing over nothing, since the ghost voluntarily nerfed his own, crushing magic pressure, just to avoid dealing passive damage to innocent street casuals. Totally mesmerized by the massive scale of the gallery, the hooded guy innocently comments that the map was built with a ton of floors. The hunter enters internal panic mode, knowing that suppressing energy at that level is like tearing your own legs off, anxiously asking if the guy isn't taking massive damage ticks from the pain. The elevator dings for the ride up, while the silver-haired dude mentally logs that this kid's habit of tanking pain just to please others is his absolute worst debuff. Picturing scammers and toxic players farming money off this wholesome monster song, is convinced it'll be a massive tragedy if anyone tries to exploit that innocence. Visions of greedy NPCs bowing on the floor begging for magic carries trigger a massive, blaring alarm in the veteran hunter's head. Watching his VIP target's black cape move through the lit lobby, he concludes the real boss, level threat, is the idiot humans who might accidentally aggro the kid. The main automatic doors slide open, rendering the massive scale of an absurdly developed, high-traffic metropolis shining under the morning sun. Tick's first step outside the HQ, feeling the wind on his face, quoting an old proverb about how even rivers and huge mountains get graphics updates over a decade. The modern skyline hard clashes with his dark memories of the bloody, wrecked ruins he saw back when his precious portrait was lost in the rubble. Surrounded by rushing casuals and hunters flexing heavy weapon skins, the young guy marvels at how vibrant and diverse this new ecosystem has become. Watching his VIP guests' contagious hype, the silver-haired dude relaxes his shoulders, finding it hilarious that people carrying giant saivas on the street is seen as totally normal. Crossing the noisy intersection, an aggro-looking hunter stares down the traffic with his head high, totally unbothered by the duo. Other adventurers rocking a set of heavy wings and steel graves stroll by casually, proving the radical balance patch forced onto humanity. The guide focuses on the curious stares locked onto them and guesses that even with his stats hard nerfed, the entity still can't fully hide his A-class monster presence. To dodge any PvP with rival guilds in the main plaza, the curator highly recommends his partner keep the hood equipped at all times, getting a very positive "will do." Pointing at the suspended metal tracks on the horizon, Song-un explains they're gonna hop on that super modern train to fast travel to the famous restaurant. Gripping the collar of his cape, the painter confesses he finds it unbelievable that civil engineering leaps centuries ahead in just 31 years of server rebuild time. The glowing turnstiles of the packed station, the investigator reaches out to swipe a corporate pass to unlock VIP access for his buddy. The hunter hands over a premium corporate card to the guy, telling him he can spam it to buy whatever loot he wants since it literally has no cap. Holding the shiny item super carefully, the MC asks why he's getting dropped such high-tier loot, admitting he feels a little spooked by the setup. The field trip officially starts with the duo walking chill towards the massive station's access gates. Riding the glass elevator with a view of the city, the young guy notes the public transit looks pretty dead and asks if there's a specific lore reason for that. Caught off guard by the innocent question, the investigator pauses for a sec, trying to find the best way to explain the meta. He shoots straight, saying the entry fee is just way too expensive, as the modern train silently pulls into the platform. Already walking into the train car, the entity thinks out loud that if the players can't afford the ticket, capitalism definitely survived the apocalypse update perfectly. Sitting comfortably, the curator agrees with the logic, adding that the gap between whales and free-to-play users only got worse over time. Checking the time on his watch, the hunter notes there should be at least a dozen people in there, since the daily reset just happened. Painter gets a massive jump scare from the info, shocked to realize they are in the middle of peak hours and the lobby is still a ghost town. Breaking it down a bit more, Song-un says the schedule varies by guild, but the vast majority of grinders start their daily quests around 7 in the morning. Hidden under his hood, the young guy reaches the sad conclusion that human rights got completely deleted from the server, and that getting turned into a painting was the best RNG of his life. The ride stays chill as the transport crosses the modern city map under a light snow weather effect. Watching the render through the window, the silver-haired dude tries to switch topics, asking if his partner remembers the classic sweets he saved for him a few days back. The guy nods instantly, promising to pay back the favor ASAP, though the guide politely assures him there's zero need to do that. The chat shifts to the famous street food carts, with the hunter listing a bunch of god-tier food drops they could spot on their route during the tour. The train car goes dead silent for a frame when Song-un turns his head and casually asks if the caped guy even knows what these snacks are. Absolutely baffled, the MC thinks it's wild how naturally the investigator keeps treating him like a perfectly standard human main. But deep down he loves the lack of common sense, eagerly accepting the food offer and tossing his own worries out the window. Super helpful, the guide promises to do his best to track down a food cart, but warns him not to get his hype too high because of the city's strict aesthetic bans. He explains the local players dodge that kind of heavy grinding, and any petty complaint about the vibe ends up nuking the businesses of lower-tier merchants. Hearing the long breakdown, the painter gets the meta and comments on the hard border that separates the city mains from the rural players. The train pushes forward on the suspended rails, while the curator nods somewhat hesitantly, prompting the young guy to ask the real lore reason for such a toxic divide. Song-un sighs, admitting he doesn't really know how to explain the phenomenon, summing it up as just being the general mindset of the new player base. Flashing his official ID, he reveals the current devs assign tiers to separate and rank every citizen's value, with Class 1 being the highest and most OP. The rule states that high-ranking hunters automatically unlock the best VIP perks, as long as they don't have any major bans on their record. He then explains that city players with low gold farming or unstable jobs get auto-demoted to the second social tier. Meanwhile, the casuals living in the far-out provinces get assigned the third tier as the absolute baseline standard of living. The meta gets even worse for the completely broke players living in the border zones without any registered accounts, getting totally ignored by the system and dumped into the fourth category. To cap off the brutal reality, toxic griefers make up the fifth class, getting stripped of all basic rights and opening themselves up to getting PK'd as player, killed by anyone at any time. In total silence, the entity downloads the heavy info, noticing that this brutal server segregation became totally normalized for the players of this era. Trying to dig a little deeper into the lore, he asks in a soft tone if there's any logical excuse for the devs to split the player base so aggressively. The guide's answer focuses on local security infrastructure, reminding him they live in a chaotic sandbox where lethal dungeons can spawn at any given frame. Walking through a charming aesthetic zone with classic architecture, the silver-haired dude mentions that a lot of the invader beasts ended up permanently coding themselves into the planet. With massive winged mobs patrolling the skyboxes, building heavily buffed defensive walls on the city borders became the only legit strat for survival. A plus, tech adapted fast, and the mats used to build the modern skyscrapers started being farmed directly from the drops of defeated boss monsters. Snapping his fingers to spawn magic flames, the hunter flexes that the city is heavily monitored by an elite squad of sweats ready to wipe out any threat. This pay-to-win piece contrasts heavily with the nightmare of the abandoned provinces, where loot is scarce and any dumb misclick costs innocent lives on the daily. Already settled in a fancy restaurant for lunch, Seong unserves the plates, swearing he handpicked this spot specifically because they don't cook with monster drops. Savoring the premium meal, the guide concludes that literally all the common sense of human gameplay suffered a massive rework after the Great Cataclysm patch. While happily chewing his food, the MC thinks it's absolute madness that the entire world shifted this hard in just 31 years. But tasting the perfect seasoning of that dish brings a huge wave of relief to the young guy, who flags good food as the only glowing W in the middle of this whole dystopia. The tour keeps moving along the banks of a super bright, artificial canal, with the investigator pointing out that the zone is insanely hot even though it's peak winter. He points to the surrounding structures, revealing the admins cast complex terraforming spells on the landscaping to turn the place into an open-air greenhouse. Distracted by the beautiful graphics, the painter's eyes quickly lock onto a chubby little bird that he swears he's never seen in his entire playthrough. Feeding the cute mob some seeds, the silver-haired guy explains that the fluffy bird is actually a utility monster farmed to produce high-tier crafting mats. Watching the totally friendly interaction, the hooded guy is amazed, realizing that the species really evolved to co-op peacefully with humans. A whole flock of little birds lands on the veteran hunter's shoulders and arms, leaving the MC totally enchanted by the random wholesome cutscene. Loving the super cozy vibe of the artificial river, the curator breaks the silence by suggesting his guest dip his feet in the warm water to chill for a bit. Without second guessing it, the young guy walks calmly to the edge of the glowing stream, letting the peace of the moment completely wash over him. He dunks his bare feet into the gentle current, fully enjoying the delicious thermal buff the greenhouse spell provides to the zone. With his eyes locked on the surface, the entity praises how clean the urban river is, noting the crystal clear liquid has a totally different scent than normal water. Weirded out by his partner's highly philosophical stance, Song uncalls his name in a super confused and slightly tense tone of voice. Completely lost in his own glitchy thoughts, the young guy mutters quietly, asking why on earth this canal smells like the ocean right in the middle of the city. In that exact frame, the investigator's eyes go wide in pure shock as he detects an absurdly dense energy leaking uncontrollably from his target's hitbox. The water around the guy starts glitching violently, creating massive splashes and huge waves that perfectly sync with the intense shift in the area's magic aura. The cape's hood slips off, exposing long glowing hair, forcing the curator to scream for his buddy, totally hijacked by the panic of the jump scare. Staring at the terrifying new skin of the young guy sitting in the shallow water, the silver-haired dude stutters, failing to hide his fear while trying to verify his ID. Holding an unbreakable zen vibe and a super welcoming look, the mystical figure nods at the guide's question in a very calm and polite way. Showing off the long strands of his imposing new cosmetic, the MC formally introduces himself, swearing his username is still exactly the same as always. Trying his hardest not to show the absolute terror that just corrupted his soul, the veteran hunter forces a friendly posture just to mask his panic. The cutscene quickly skips to the hallways of a 5-star hotel, where the guide hands over the keycard for the luxury suite and locks in the dinner plans with his guest. Playing the role of the flawless host, Song wishes the other dimensional player a good rest before dipping out to his own room. The second he locks the door behind him, the investigator collapses onto the hotel floor, gasping for air while cold sweat drips down his completely drained face. The nightmare image of that entity at the canal haunts his cache, proving once and for all that the guy he's carrying is nowhere close to being human. Putting the pieces of this bizarre puzzle together, he remembers that up until now, the artwork always made sure to use his full, normal username to introduce himself. Exactly because he spotted that massive energy shift during the walk, the hunter went off pure instinct and tested the creature by asking for its original tag. The massive red flag was that the answer dropped the last name entirely, with the being adopting an identity strictly focused on its own god, like ego. Getting off the floor with a struggle, the silver-haired dude covers his face with his hands, roasting himself for being so naive, and throwing on his own escort mission. He admits his fatal misplay of dropping his guard, just because the entity's crushing spiritual pressure had randomly vanished on the street. Jacked by fear, the hunter decrees that no matter how hard the monster tries to play the polite NPC, it will never be a real player. The researcher's sad endgame conclusion is that he's sharing a lobby with an unstoppable force of nature that's just trawling around imitating human AI. Meanwhile, in the next suite over, the MC flops on his back onto the insanely soft bed and confesses that dealing with modern society is super scary for him. Chilling out a bit, the guy walks over to the room's giant window to check out the epic view from the 45th floor, but his stomach loudly pings that his hunger bar is empty. Opening his hands slowly, he reveals the tiny pet he hid inside his cape and complains he can't feed it in the hotel, while the bird affectionately rubs against him. Back in the hotel room, Gio happily plays with his little magic pet on the bed, not stressing about a single thing. He promises to cook up something fire using the leftover sweet syrup once they travel back home. The reality is the guy's brain was completely empty of any aggro, having zero clue about the absolute horror he had caused a few hours ago. Idling outside, Song-un tries to calm down leaning on a bench. The investigator reviews the run and notes things went without any server wipes, internally praying the monster is just trying to mimic human AI in its own weird way. Rechecking his watch, the hunter drops a super tired sigh. All he wants right now is for this crazy IRL escort mission to hit the finish line ASAP without any major bugs. However, the terrifying flashback of the urban canal pops back up to haunt his RAM. In that exact frame, the entity's mere presence made the city's water physics completely glitch out in a violent way. During a speedboat ride, the guide screams his guest's name in total panic, trying to grab his attention. Acting on pure RNG impulse, the MC just stands straight up in the moving boat. The sudden physics break makes the vehicle rock hard, splashing freezing water everywhere. Gripping the rail, the silver-haired dude warns that this troll move is terrifying the driver. Meanwhile, the hooded guy just stares at the rough water with hyper-focus, totally ignoring the hazard warning. Realizing his misclick, Gio apologizes politely. He defends the glitch, saying his curiosity just piqued, since he'd never seen a canal rendered like that in his whole playthrough. Even while accepting the apology, the hunter calls him out, pointing out the zone smells heavily of the ocean. That act he was gonna jump ship out of nowhere was absolute madness. Trying to clear his name, the entity claims he only pulled that move because he was scared the guide would take fall damage, not wanting to trigger a PvP debate. The investigator just says thanks for the carry. Catching an opening, Song-un side-eyes him and casually asks if the black-caped kid happens to be a fan of the ocean. Staring at the massive retaining walls around the water, the MC fails to process the prompt and drops a completely confused mumble. With that, the hunter breaks down the lore, explaining that the massive aggro from aquatic bosses made the sea level skyrocket. To dodge a server wipe, the devs were forced to dig deep canals to let the salt water flow through the map. Flashing back to the creepy glitch from earlier, the silver-haired dude notes that the entity's hyper-fixation on the ocean smell at the Cheonjicheon Canal planted a massive red flag in his head. Running a quick check on his own stats, Gio admits internally he's not really a big fan of the sea biome. But immediately, a warm save file loads into his chest, making him lag on his reply to the investigator. The soul of the priest Giovanni, who now co-ops the exact same headspace, always had a maxed-out affinity for the water, getting buffed by that pure feeling. The guy smiles and concludes that, at the end of the day, he actually does like the sea. The curator is left completely lost by this glitchy answer that mixes a yes and a no at the exact same time, having zero clue what to log. Hard pivoting the chat, the magic painting stares into the endless blue and innocently asks if mermaids also spawn in this zone. Dropping the word also instantly triggers a massive alarm in the veteran guide's head. He repeats the tag, mermaid, under his breath, trying to digest the heavy lore implications of that simple question. Connecting the toxic dots between the entity and the ocean, the hunter explains that mobs with those aquatic skins usually spawn in the flooded zones, and even if they aren't real beasts, they borrow that model. The lore dump goes deeper, breaking down how ancient worship, forgotten myths, and old creepypastas got a massive buff after the Great Cataclysm patch. Because players know and hard believe in these fantasy stories, the massive faith energy generated literally renders into real, world boss mobs that threaten modern society. The mysterious artist listens to every word from the investigator dead serious, downloading the harsh reality of that new dystopian server. Song-un laments that their planet got nerfed down to the size of a simple game board. The entire Earth basically mutated into a giant, open, world dungeon running on super strict mechanics. At that exact frame, the system UI flashes in the MC's vision, pinging his vital main quests, chat up the sun god and drop a game, over on the Little Mermaid. Cutting the heavy tension, the hooded guy points ahead and politely announces they finally hit the objective marker. The rendered distance clears up, revealing an insanely premium restaurant. The exotic hub was literally carved inside the shell of a massive sea mob, showcasing the leftover loot from an old cleared dungeon. Already chilling at their luxury table for dinner, the guide mentions the spot is a static dungeon, but quickly clocks that his guest is a total noob with these modern server tags. Dropping a full tutorial, the silver-haired dude explains that hazard zones are split between static dungeons, which are hard locked to one map coordinate, and roaming dungeons, which run on their own RNG pathing rules. He details that virtual ones have zero physical borders, auto-triggering out of nowhere to suck in players who hit completely random requirements, like males in their 30s walking into a convenience store at night. Cutting his own steak, the entity thinks that mechanic is complete trash. After all, getting dragged into a lethal PvP zone just for buying snacks sounds like a massive dev oversight. The investigator agrees, waving his knife. He confirms that the anxiety levels of casual players went through the roof, even if that specific buggy dimension is a super rare spawn. On the flip side, static dungeons spawn by completely overwriting the local map geometry, creating alien biomes that didn't exist on Earth, exactly like the Boogie Moraine hub where they're currently eating. In the specific lore of that fancy spot, the whole raid was themed around cooking. The aggro only stopped when a totally basic chef-class hunter managed to heavily buff the dungeon master's mood with his food. The cutscene of the chef dropping a flawless illustrates the epic W. This proves that not every boss fight requires pure DPS to hit the peace ending. Hyped by the underdog lore, the MC smiles, feeling touched, but the jump scare hits when the guide mentions the hero chef awakened his skills and is still actively grinding quests at 92 years old. Staring at the crowded lobby, the hunter clarifies that awakened players who hit a certain level cap end up aging at an insanely slower tick rate than standard humans. Shaking slightly in his chair, Gio complains he can't stop getting jump, scared by the bizarre mechanics of this server. To him, the idea of being forced to grind daily quests in your 90s is absolute nightmare fuel. Casually getting back to the tutorial, the curator brings up village type dungeons, where alien terrain overwrites regular land and stays permanently locked in even after the boss is cleared. Finally, there are the gateway dungeons, which randomly spawn just to act as portals to other dimensions, looking exactly like the level select screens in retro video games. Satisfied with the walkthrough, the young guy confirms he downloaded all the info perfectly. The guide then leans back and asks if the loot they're eating is top tier. Flashing a blindingly radiant smile inherited straight from the priest, the painter hypes up the food, saying it was an S-tier run because it reminded him of the epic dinners he used to share with his beloved clan back in the day. Caught totally off guard by the pure, divine glow radiating from the monster's face, Seong-un loses his voice for a frame before admitting he's super happy to see him vibing. The lobby's energy shifts when the other players start gossiping and hard staring at their table, sweating bullets. The guide mentally begs his friend to check his map and read the room if he actually wants to pass as a human. Trying to dodge the unwanted aggro, the silver-haired dude whispers that humans are highly social mobs and suggests they fast travel out of there, keeping the momentum. He pitches aside, quest to the famous Gyeongbokgung Palace. Dropping that historic tag brings a heavy, thoughtful silence to the hooded guy. The entity just stares into the void while the word echoes loud and full of lore in his tired RAM. Old save files from his life as a basic teacher boot up, showing the tons of happy field trips he ran with his little students. The guy wonders with a heavy heart if those kids are surviving the meta in this new world. Stashing that massive nostalgia in his chest, the entity's chill face turns back to the guide with a super low, key smile. He accepts the party invite instantly, swearing he's actually super hyped for the palace run. The field trip rolls on with the duo pulling up to a stunning traditional palace, lit up by floating lanterns in the night sky of the busy city hub. Through the historical courtyard, Seong-un drops a thanks for the polite NPC greeting from the event staff while escorting his highly dangerous VIP. Gio checks out his own transmog looking pretty amazed, catching a genuine compliment from the hunter about how perfectly that classic skin fits his vibe. Feeling nostalgic about the map, the guy confesses that back in the day, he only ever played the escort role for others here, so he never actually got to equip these premium cosmetic items himself. Wholesome memories take over his cache, reminding him how tough it was to chill out the bored kids on school trips, but that organizing them for screenshots was actually super fun. The nostalgic flashback renders his tiny students running around in a chaotic lobby on a bright, sunny day. Snapping back to the night event, he admires the flying decorations, absolutely amazed at how seamlessly that ancient zone got a practical and magical graphics update over time. Enjoying the chill aesthetic of the cultural walk, the young guy pings the investigator's name, wanting to clarify a quick detail about the environment. Pointing his finger at some glowing mobs floating through the dark skybox, he asks, out of curiosity, what the current player base actually calls those luminous entities. Totally blindsided by the creature's lack of lore knowledge, the silver-haired dude admits he assumed the guy already had the wiki memorized for that specific enemy type. Watching the spirits idle peacefully among the casuals, the hunter explains they are literal living fairy tales, asking if it's the buddy's first time rendering them. Holding his flawless Zen, Geo confirms the read, casually mentioning that true children of the origin don't usually go AFK in tourist traps packed with humans. Right then, Song unpasses a hot street snack to the guy, eager to data me more info about this deep, cryptic term he just dropped. Chewing the top-tier food, the painter gives a TLDR that the origin is basically a cosmic engine that writes the code and balances the servers across every dimension in the universe. The veteran investigator connects the dots in a flash, fascinated by the realization that the monster is literally explaining the magic engine that runs their entire society. The young guy breaks down that these entities spawned from the magic source code, just copy, paste human concepts, without ever actually processing thoughts like real player characters. Fixing the ribbons on his clean fit, he details that these mobs are absolute pros at modding their skins, making it completely impossible to scan their true base stats. Hooked on the dimensional lore, Song unasks if regular NPCs can't render these creatures, getting instant confirmation that players with that specific visual buff are insanely rare. Taking a refreshing sip of his iced drink, the guide recalls that back in the vanilla days, there were massive rumors that almost nobody had the hardware to actually see these cosmic spirits. He explains the whole meta flipped after Earth got griefed by the dungeon crashes, forcing the global ecosystem to patch and giving awakened humans this exclusive survival vision perk. Flashing a proud smirk, the hunter points out that his VIP guest rocks a flawless human model, totally convinced he's just one of those rare, cracked talents who can interact with high-tier magic. Slurping his juice from a plastic cup, the entity calmly agrees, stating he also considers himself a massive talent who unlocked his own magic tree just through a simple vintage painting. The silver-haired dude chokes a bit on the wild reply, super shook by how effortlessly the guy discusses his own glitchy existence with absolutely zero filter. Awkwardly nodding along with the tense joke, the investigator mentally questions if the monster is just hard, trolling him or dropping a dangerously literal truth bomb. A loud chaotic audio cue grabs both of their attention instantly, making them pan the camera to figure out what triggered the massive aggro in the middle of the courtyard. A fast, aggressive animation cuts through the air, proving the heated voice chat just upgraded into a totally unnecessary physical PvP encounter between casuals. Watching the heavy-duty guards pin down the griefers, the guide complains about the random toxicity and predicts the tilted trolls will get kicked from the server real quick. Suddenly, a cryptic system UI pops up glowing blindingly bright right in Geo's face, issuing a mandatory quest to run a security threat scan on one of the players involved. Totally jump scared by the glowing pop-up blocking his FOV, the MC reacts visibly confused, having zero clue why the game engine is demanding a critical action on that exact frame. Calmly pointing at the end of the brawl, the hunter notes that the security squad is already dragging the griefer out of the zone to restore server peace. Framing a camera shot with his fingers, Seong unwatches the brawler get booted and complains that the guy just looked like a harmless noob getting griefed by toxic players. Popping his own analytical scan directly onto the guy in the frame, the veteran investigator spots a max-level threat warning glowing terrifyingly above the target who was hiding his true stats. Covering his own face as cold sweat drops, the hunter enters full internal panic, questioning if it's really safe to let a walking, nuke-free roam through the packed city hub. Completely ignoring the guide's silent meltdown, the young painter starts casually strolling across the stone floor, completely bypassing the violent PvP that just dropped. Catching the fixed, stressed-out stare of his party member, the entity turns his chill face and asks innocently if he ended up staring at the event a bit too intensely. Completely shattering the heavy tension, the tiny golden pet jumps out of the MC's cape with a super hyped chirp, dropping a massive, spine-chilling jump scare on both of them. Firing off a desperate, frame-perfect reflex, Geo grabs the glowing bird and shoves it back into his inventory while mumbling a frustrated line, trying to cover up the massive magic glitch. The guy just stands there looking completely clunky, trying to hide the huge, awkward bulge in his dark cape, while the exhausted hunter figures that trying to stealth now is absolutely pointless. Having somewhat cooled down, the curator asks if the cute pet was that giant, magical water boss from before, but the young guy instantly corrects him, proudly stating the mob's tag is Honey. Giving up on finding any logic in this busted run, Song undrops a sigh of pure defeat, feeling like the server wipe is imminent and having zero clue how he's gonna log this monumental glitch to the guild. The poor investigator drops his head, massaging his aching forehead, feeling the massive weight of the carry and the stress slowly deleting his sanity points. His helpful guide's depressed reaction. The guy starts backing up slowly, his eyes loaded with heavy guilt for dragging aggro into the lobby. Cornered by the dark expression the silver-haired dude made, he wrongly guesses the guy absolutely hates him, stressing that he'll trigger massive PvP events if they keep exploring. Opting to dodge any bigger disasters on the street, the MC suggests in a super soft tone that they cancel the tour right now and fast, travel back to the safe zone of the hotel. Happily accepting the prompt, the investigator promises to buy 3 more large cups of spicy food before they log out, making the young guy laugh with hype and joke about how much his bro loves to eat. Hiding in the cold shadows of a dark alley, the fake brawler who got kicked from the palace spectates the duo from afar. Trash, talking the mysterious hooded kid who totally blew his stealth build. Gripping a lethal, crafted weapon, the tilted criminal grumbles that in any standard lobby, he would have instantly initiated combat to teach the noob a lesson without a second thought. Flashing back to the piercing, locked on stare of the painter who literally read his soul data, the villain shivers, detecting a disgusting, terrifying aura radiating from that fully covered player. Scanning the tactical layout, the bandit quickly IDs the silver-haired guy's face, confirming he's the infamous, high-threat curator from the major guild. Going into absolute panic over his own toxic discovery, he frantically deduces the mystery VE must be an insanely OPP awakened hunter to warrant a tank like that. The criminal gulps hard, feeling a chill down his spine, admitting that for one brief, horrific frame, he was absolutely certain all his dirty save files got leaked to the public server. He recalls the massive, sweaty grind he put in to infiltrate the dangerous Sun cult, terrified his master plan will get totally wiped if the hooded kid decides to report him to the mods. Jacked by extreme paranoia and rage, the fake priest coldly locks in the decision that the only safe out is to drop a permanent, painful game over on the nosy kid. A quiet, high-pitched chirp interrupts the killer's focus, making him jump and quickly pan his camera to find the source of the weird audio cue in the alley. Staring at the adorable, glowing critter perched on the wet pipes, he squints in confusion, trying to scan what kind of glitchy mob just spawned alone in there. The villain quickly connects the obvious dots and realizes the magic pet belongs to the guy he's hunting, stupidly assuming the target is just a low-level tamer with zero PvP experience. A toxic, sadistic grin takes over the criminal's dirty face as he heavily trolls the idea that the weak bird was sent there just to snipe his hidden pathing. Thinking he has the absolute high ground, he lunges with a violent, aggro grab to catch the pet, mocking the noob mistake that's gonna let him track the useless tamer's base. But the bandit's arrogant victory face instantly morphs into pure, unfiltered shock when he realizes, in the worst possible way, that he just made the biggest misplay of his entire run. Emitting a volcanic, totally untankable heat, the tiny golden bird easily crushes the mystic gem, firing off an unstoppable, devastating energy blast straight into the attacker. The dark alley gets mercilessly swallowed by screams of pure DOT damage as the bird's absurd, destructive heat punishes the threat, deleting the criminal without leaving a single physical drop behind. Far away from the blast zone, the strong magic link makes the MC's glowing eye snap wide open in the dark, instantly feeling the violent hit to his beloved pet's HP bar. The silent moonlight floods the clean window of the luxury hotel room, setting a lonely, sad aesthetic after the long, high-stress city tour. Wearing lightweight casual gear, the young painter touches his lips, feeling his anxiety spike hard, softly calling out the sweet username of his precious bird. He walks super slowly through the cozy room and stares at the perfectly made bed with a heavy drop in his stomach, confirming that his hype golden critter has legit despawned. Gripping his own shirt tight to tank the emotional damage, the guy bitterly mourns the missing status of his only co-op partner and begs for the pet to respawn soon. The massive glass hotel towers alone in the freezing night of the giant city, while Gio complains sadly that the NPCs won't let him run a peaceful lobby, feeling like he's about to break down crying from all the stacked frustration.